Howdy. Welcome back to another show. I'm going to be covering something kind of similar to what I was covering yesterday. Rather than kind of mining in the past for, because the video that I did about, well, the topic that I covered from Pine Creek yesterday was 3 or 4 weeks old. This one is pretty fresh. So, and it was kind of funny. I wasn't going to do any commentary on this. I really wasn't. So, if for those of you who know the context behind this is pretty simple. So Mister Deity, who's been a fixture in YouTube for a very long time, does some very entertaining kind of counter apologetics videos. He's an atheist, and they're generally really good. I've enjoyed his videos for years. Um, he decided to do a video, kind of poking fun at uh, Doug from Pine Creek and his definition of woke. And so the video is out there. There's a link to it in the description below. I recommend if you haven't watched it, maybe take a look at it. You might not like his type of humor. I think he's a funny guy. Some of his humor is like intentionally corny. That's sort of the point. But it's fun. It's a great exercise in, like, being as sarcastic as possible. I saw it. I liked it. It's funny. Thumbs up. Um, I didn't really think that Doug was going to actually say anything about it. I didn't think that he'd really care one way or the other. I thought maybe he'd just kind of ignore it. But he did. He did react to it. He made like one of his quick videos, I think, which I haven't seen yet. I don't know if he posted that on his main channel or over on Pine Creek Politics, but he did kind of a mix up, like sarcasm versus sarcasm kind of thing. I haven't seen that, so I don't know. But this was him from a couple days ago. He talks about the video, kind of introduces it, and then he is going to play some of it, most of it, and then kind of give commentary through it. I've seen some of this. So, and generally with these two guys, these two creators, they don't usually drop anything, and blatantly offensive that's going to get either one of them demonetized. So this should be interesting. So, I don't know exactly what comes at the very end of his commentary, but this video is down there is showing like it's 3 hours and 16 minutes long. That's other stuff. This is a small part. So we're just going to be focusing on that. Anyway, I will say hello to a few people here in the live chat. Michael Deaton, thanks for the reminder to folks. Alex Baptista writes, "Glad you're covering this one." Yeah, and like I said, I wasn't going to. I really didn't think there would be much of a need to. But when I was listening to this earlier today, and I was hearing some comments from Doug, and I was like, yeah, okay, um, now I kind of want to hear more, uh, just to see. Me, Scott, good to see you, and I think that's everybody for now. Anamorphic Mind Red. Is this the 4-minute video he put out earlier today? No. No, this was from, when did he do this one? 2 days ago? This is one of his live shows he did, yeah, 2 days ago. And I think he was live earlier today. I think Pine Creek's usually live on Thursdays at some point. But no, this isn't one of his like edited videos. This is one of his live things, and this is where he covers it. So this is where he does the most responding to it. Space Lord is here. Good to see you. Okay. Bro, hi. Good to see you as well. And Mr. Mouty is here. Um, with some questionable advice here. Attack ideas, not douchebags. But good advice. I will do that. I will keep my mind open. I will only take on douchebag ideas. Doug seems like he's been a real whiny snowflake lately, and as the kids say, maybe he needs to touch grass. He lives in Tucson, Arizona, so I don't know if there's any grass to touch. I apologize to anybody that lives in Arizona. I've never been there. I've flown over it, but I've never been to Arizona. I've been in Nevada, lived there for a little bit. Um, they had grass, but it was always propped up, usually by a casino or something, or a park. Um, and Michael Fredgren is here also. Hello, Michael. Good to see you. Yeah, so thanks to all of you joining me live. I know there's other people going live right now, so it gets kind of crowded in the evening, in the later days of the week. So let's see where we can go with this. Let me flip this around, put myself here so like I can embiggen the screen that's got the interesting stuff going on. Okay, so we're going to start off a little bit into this. He's going to introduce this. I've got this sped up a little bit, 1.25. If it gets too fast, I usually, Doug, when he does video playback, he plays it faster. So if his playback of Mr. Deity is too quick, I'll slow it down a little bit. But usual rules apply. If you can't hear anything, if I sound bad, if the video doesn't sound like anything, yell at me. And we'll get into this. Like I said, you don't have to have actually seen the previous video for context. It might help. That is to say, Mr. Deity's original video. But yeah, I think this one stands alone. And I think Doug goes through, well, he goes through most of the stuff that he finds important anyway. So here we go.
But so yeah, Mr. Deity made a video, a very sarcastic video, which I love because I'm sarcastic myself, and I knew that video existed way before most of you because I have a friend who's a Patreon, and he sent it to me about 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. So I actually knew this was in the hopper, but I wasn't
He has he's got a man on the inside. Somebody in Mr. Deity corporate is getting the word out to Doug.
quite sure if he would actually publish it because some of his Patreon supporters, Mr. Deity's Patreon supporters, when they saw the video ahead of time, they weren't impressed with it. But that's because the Patreon supporters for Mr. Deity probably tend to think more like me because they have money, and are successful. Oh, that's so cruel.
I have money. I'm successful. I also have a lot of debt too, so that kind of balances out. So I guess I'm totally poor. Captain Desk, good to see you. Caught you over on Answers in Atheism. Looked like a good show. I'm sorry I wasn't able to watch the majority of it. I was kind of wrapping up my workday, but good to see you. Thanks for showing up. So yeah, Doug's got to make fun of the poor again. You know, because I guess the poor deserve it. I mean, that's why they're poor. You keep score in life by with money, right? If you got money, you're winning. If you lose money, you're losing.
I'm so mean. But so I
Yeah, punching down on the poor is kind of shitty. It's a mean girl kind of thing. But anyway,
wasn't sure if he was going to produce it, but he actually did. And of course, the non-producers, the burdens of society, love it. Oh, I'm having far too much fun with this. The smart woke.
this kind of giggling goes on behind the scenes at almost every conservative like website or think tank. They do this kind of stuff quite a bit. Only it's a lot more offensive. I'll give Doug some credit here. He's just laughing about people being, getting government aid or being poor. Because he knows that's going to get a rise out of people. But generally, in conservative circles, they would be laughing at things that are much darker, much worse. How do I know that? Used to be a conservative. Why am I not a conservative anymore? Because it was exhausting and debilitating to the soul. Uh, Doug so successfully has to brag about it on the internet, which is something successful people completely do every day, all the time. Yeah, I noticed that too. But you know, big Bill Maher vibes from Doug. Yeah, kind of. Okay, let's keep going here.
People, they've stopped talking to me. Mr. Deity hasn't figured that out yet. And that I love. I mean, and
People
don't get me wrong, I
watch
think
you.
the smart woke people, they still like me, but they realize the more they talk to me, and like there's a guy on my political channel from a long time ago, well, months ago. You know who you are. You might be listening right now. Would you call yourself the rational liberal, or what do you call yourself? I forget. And we've had great conversations. And I bet you anything he watched that video that Mr. Deity produced and he's just shaking his head. Oh my goodness. Don't you understand Doug's position? And
I don't know about that. I don't because I don't know that even with all the sarcasm that Mr. Deity ladles out in his video, I don't know that he's really missing the point. Again, his video is being done because it's a work of sarcastic entertainment and it's a commentary on just the whole vibe of the presentation of the idea, and not like a pointed step by step refutation of an argument. Things get a little murky there. It's more art than science. I'll put it that way. And I'm not giving away anything.
some of my subscribers have said, Doug, Mr. Deity strawmanned you. And I try to avoid that type of philosophical language because it just is so ridiculous. But I don't think Mr. Well, how do I say this?
It's a good bit, Chris. I'm dangerous. Talking to me puts you in danger. Don't you get it yet? I'm successful. He makes a claim coming up here that I think you'll all get a kick out of. The rational national. Yeah, the rationalist nationalist. Hello, Donna Murphy. Good to have you here.
There is absolutely nothing in Mr. Deity's video that he produced where he disagrees with me.
Okay, that's already kind of cringe. Like the entire video is dead is a like a masterclass in how to say the opposite. There's actually who's the guy? Justin Hawkins, the lead singer to The Darkness. He has a I think a growing in popularity. It's already pretty popular YouTube channel, but I think it's continuing to get more popular. And his commentary is pretty good. And I don't know if he actually like explicitly states when he's doing these ones, but he'll do videos where he'll cover like a musical performance that is not particularly good, but he will take it from the perspective of he will say only nice things about it. And it's clearly, it's clearly meant to be tongue in cheek, right? Like you know what's going on if you listen to it. And that's sort of really, Mr. Deities is less subtle than that. Um, but it's the same kind of thing. And so this idea is like, well, he didn't disagree with a single. Yes, that might be true. He didn't literally verbally disagree with anything that you said specifically. He only couches it in layers of sarcasm that cast doubt on the entirety of everything you put forward. So there's that.
Did you guys notice that? Because I said it's all about woke. For those of you who are new and have no idea what's going on, welcome. This is a sort of a in-house spat between atheists, which I love. I love
An in-house spat between atheists. I don't know that it's really a spat. It's not a spat, and it's not between atheists. This is about the political side. Um, Brian Dalton, Mr. Deity. I don't think I think he's even said it. He doesn't agree with Doug's politics, but he appreciates what Doug has done in the counter apologetic circles that they mutually kind of circulate in. And yeah, thanks, Matty, for that. Justin Hawkins rides again. Often funny videos. Justin Hawkins is a trip. Let's see.
conflict. Some of you left wing granola crunching, sandal wearing, tree hugging, uh, tie dye shirt wearing people. They can't handle conflict. So
Hey, I don't wear tie-dye shirts.
this live stream is probably not for you because you can't handle it. You just like peace and harmony all the time. What was I going to say? His patrons didn't like it, but he produced it anyhow. I saw it coming. Oh, disagreement. He actually didn't disagree with anything I said. I defined wokeism as a type of feel sorry forism, a suffering from feel sorry forism, which that itself needs its own definition, and that it has to do with the oppressed and the oppressors, and that you feel sorry for the oppressors, and that causes you to, if it's hyper feel sorry forism, it causes you not to think objectively. He might disagree with that one, but he doesn't disagree that you should feel sorry for people, especially the oppressed. He doesn't disagree that the oppressors and the oppressed exist, and this is how I defined it.
Now keep this in mind. He's trying to lay this out like, oh, this is how I defined it. When he starts playing the video, this changes a little bit. So Odin Alvar, I had a bit of a weird exchange with Doug over privilege. He took personal umbrage. I had a similar conversation with, well, I started to have a conversation. There was a group of us in there. It was on Scholar Fiction's channel, and it started in the live chat, and then I kind of jumped in, but I was only able to be there for a little bit. And I was having a conversation. Skylar is, he is kind of like, I think, a centrist Democrat kind of thing. He's definitely not a Republican, but he's sort of, yeah, depending on what the views are. And somebody had brought up um, this idea of privilege, and he was running with a concept, and I was like, that's not what privilege is. And when I went in to talk to him about it, there were too many of us over talking to each other. It didn't really go anywhere, but he kind of took a little umbrage at it too. And it's kind of interesting to me, the people that do still. I think when if privilege had been used, when I was still a conservative, I think it did come up from time to time. I would have taken it kind of personally too, but that's because if you are getting a lot of ideas from anybody that kind of is on that side, they don't even have to be hard right. They can just be kind of centrist leaning, which actually centrist in America is pretty hard right compared to like say Italy or France, but still. Um, Although with France, I don't know, you get some right wingers over there. It seems like the way they end up communicating about the issues of privilege and stuff amongst themselves is built on the idea, hey, when you hear that you need to you need to be on guard because they're coming after you. You need to take personal umbrage at that, because the equivalent of a personal attack. Conservatives used to do this all the time, and there's still a lot of conservatives that do this. When they hear that, they'll hear like a little bit of a dog whistle and be like, oh, they're talking about, that just means that they don't want me, they want me to shut up. And it's like, that's not what privilege means. But anyway, I'm getting off on something else.
So he actually agrees with that part of the definition. And I actually think he would probably agree. And Mr. Deity, if you hear this, and if you're here listening right now, let me know if you're in the live stream chat. You're welcome to come on. But it would be dangerous for you to come on and talk to me because I will get you to agree with me. I'm that good at doing stuff.
This is starting to sound a little bit like late stage Dave Chappelle stuff, where he's like talking about how great he is, but then you see some of his later, his more recent stand up, and it's not that good, except when he's like stirring the pot over something kind of controversial. No offense to anybody who still gets a kick out of Dave Chappelle. Every once in a while he does have a bit that I find funny, but like his stuff on like trans issues and stuff is just fucking it's just bottom of the barrel kind of Gen X, you know, maudlin bullshit. Like, oh, I'm gonna give you the tough real truth here. It's like, no, you're not. I'm a Gen Xer, and we don't have that in us so much. I'm a little on the younger side of Gen Xers. I don't know. It seems to be hard to find Gen Xers that are actually like kind of straight shooters. Even myself, I prefer to be a little duplicitous and slimy.
because my position is so incredibly reasonable. For example, the thing that you might disagree with me on, because we don't disagree that wokeism is about feeling sorry for the oppressed. We don't disagree with that. Uh,
No, no, actually, we do. Wokeism is not about feeling sorry for the oppressed. Woke was just a word to describe people that acknowledge that different types of people from different backgrounds experience America differently. If you come from a black background, or a Latinx background, or an Asian American background, or a white background, or whatever, you get a different kind of America. And the idea of, in the African American vernacular, originally the word woke was basically, you can say that to a compatriot, to kind of like, hey, keep your head on a swivel, stay alert, stay notified, stay, keep aware, stay woke, don't don't nod off, don't let them catch you sleeping. And the thing, as the word kind of got converted to like, oh, this person's woke, it was sort of the same idea. That person understands that there are differences applied to different people. There are different standards, different strokes for different folks, and some of it is systemic. Some of it's just sort of ingrained in systems. It has an inertia of its own. Whether it's cultural, political, religious, just kind of group psychology, whatever it is. Some of this stuff just kind of carries over. And the idea that the way that Doug usually seems to have to relate to this, if somebody explains this, all I hear him regurgitate back, "Oh yeah, so it just means that you pity people and then infantilize them, and basically say they're not responsible for any of their own actions." Like, nothing that I said about woke has anything to do with what you just burped up. But he's going to keep doing that here.
what you might disagree with the first on this first part is that it might cause you to not think objectively about the facts. All you have to do is ask yourself this question: when someone is very, very emotional about something, do you think they can think clearly? If your answer is lean no, then we're agreed there too. But getting back to one of my subscribers, Vesna, she said that he strawmanned you, and I understand what she's saying because, and I'll play it shortly. But but there's so much sarcasm, and I understand for 90% of you, you probably don't even get Mr. Deity's sarcasm, and you probably don't get mine often, and you get confused. What is reality? What is? It's a bit of a gaslighting by both of us.
Sarcasm's not supposed to be like gaslighting. Here's a problem with and this is a problem I'm gonna put squarely on Gen Xers. Gen Xers, depending on where they're at, they have a tendency, I think, a bad habit, to kind of couch serious issues or approach them, because emotions are tough and dealing with them is icky and overwhelming sometimes. To couch a lot of serious issues in layers and layers of, like, usually some kind of like tone deaf comedy or snark, or throwing a couple levels of misfired of irony. And then if you get through all that bullshit, maybe you can kind of get to what the person's really talking about. But by then, they're either screaming or crying, right? Gen Xers are kind of a mess when it comes to this stuff. I've noticed this is becoming more of a problem, and my prediction is culturally this is going to be one of the reasons why I think Gen Xers are going to be blamed for more social ills than even Boomers were, because Boomers just were kind of like unicorns. You know, they popped out at a particularly good time in an economic cycle, had a lot of advantages, fucked things up royally, really didn't pay attention to the things that they were using and abusing. They have a lot of problems. Every generation has its blind spots, but Gen Xers are weird. We are a weird group, and I mean, there's a lot of variation in it. I mean, I'm obviously speaking in massive generalities, but Pine Creek kind of reminds me of this sort of kind of typical, as Gen Xers have hit this, younger Gen Xers, because I think he's in his early 50s. So he's a little on the younger side for a Gen Xer, because I think Gen X starts at around what, 68, 1967, 1968, somewhere around there, or 69. Um, so this this tendency to kind of always try to play it cool, that's not a strength. It's not. Um, but I mean, being funny and taking it easy and keeping things light, I think there is an advantage to that, keeping it that way. But there can be a tendency to be too glib and too flippant about certain issues when you don't need to be, and sometimes just trying to be as honest about it as possible is good. Um, so the way he's already approaching this, the quote unquote woke thing here already, and how this guy's going to deal with it, and sarcasm and stuff in general, their approaches are a little bit different. Um, and you'll see when he gets into it, if you haven't already seen Mr. Deity's video.
But Mister Deity, I probably understands my response video I did last night, which was very quick and I don't care, and it was bad quality.
Thanks, Titan. I can never remember. I mean, it depends on which group that you. I've seen 63. I've seen 65. I saw one group say that it was 68 was the last year. It always seems to be like on a sliding scale. 63 makes sense. I feel like Gen X gets lumped in with Boomers a lot. I don't hear a lot of Gen X slander. Yeah, I think Gen Xers tend to. I think that there's been kind of a weird, like, in the same way that that Zoomers kind of got lumped in with Millennials, because people just kept talking trash about Millennials, and they were clearly talking about the teens, but the Millennials were hitting their 40s. Like, it was just getting. It's like, okay, this is good. Now they're starting to, like, oh, wait, no, 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 hold on, it's the Zoomers I hate now. Yeah, they're the new ones. Let's talk crap about them. For whatever reason, Gen X kind of got bypassed, which I think is weird. I think that will change. I really do. I think you're seeing it now with some like Gen X comedians, especially Gen X comedians. Dave Chappelle, Monique. If anybody attempted to watch her last stand up, whew, man, that's out of touch. Uh, Bill Burr's movie, Old Dads. Holy fuck! I made it 30 minutes into that turd, and it's really hard. I think there's scenes in there where it looks like Bill Burr's going to cry. I had no idea what they're trying to do with that thing. Really out of whack. So yeah, it's going to get bad. We got it coming to us. My hope is that there's a lot of Gen X TV writers out there that are really good and going to start cranking out some really culturally relevant stuff. And there might be, there probably is. But yeah, we need to get it together. Need to. It's looking bleak.
This is the thing. Like, I just don't care enough about. I'm not a YouTube creator, really. I'm a finance guy who does this as a hobby. Like uh, Mr. Deity here. He actually, in his real life, he does video production and editing and all that sort of thing. Like, he's a professional. He's good at it. I'm bad at it. Hey, what's that, mine? I should get the Wichita Home Office to hire Mr. Deity to work for me? Well, no, it's okay if he puts his pronouns in his application. We'll look past that. Yeah, I know we have a policy of not hiring anyone who uses pronouns in the application form. I understand that, but
That seems discriminatory, right? If you use pronouns, I'm going to get rid of you. Um, Even though I just used pronouns making that statement. Greetings from Spain. Thanks for the content. Thank you, Zanvaratu. Good to see you. And greetings back to you. How's Spain doing? I imagine the weather there is better than where I am. in the middle of the United States. It's getting cold, and it's been rainy.
But we'll make an exception for Mr. Deity. Like his heart's in the right place. He just loves people who are oppressed. Like, how can you say anything bad about that? Well, he has skills. So we'll look past his wokeness and we'll hire him. We can't afford him. I'm sure
Let's
we can
get
make
past
him
this
a.
bit.
Oh my goodness. Let's start this.
Please.
Screen capture using XSplit. See, look what he's doing. I should have worn my black shirt.
Yeah, to let you know, for those of you who haven't seen Mr. Deity's video, he almost exactly kind of mirrors PineCreek style, has a similar opening. Actually, I think it's the exact same kind of opening graphic. I think he did redid the music for his intro. It kind of sounds like Mr. Deity's type of intro music, but it's clearly a riff on the song that Doug likes to use, and then he's even kind of framing himself this way. So yeah.
Hang on, I think it's worth me going to change. In fact, he does like a 2-minute intro that's not even about me. So let me, I'm going to go change to my black shirt, but I still need to have my headphones plugged in to hear him. So don't give me grief about that. And then I'll play this intro, which is funny, but not relevant to me. And then hopefully I can be back in time with my black shirt on. So this can be like a professional thing. Here we go. Okay.
Exactly, Aunt Jer. Exactly. You caught it. No pronouns. Okay, that's going to be way too fast. All right, so we're going to have to slow this down to 1. So I'm going to be online for the next 24 hours. Not a maybe not.
All right. I hope everyone had a good weekend.
Okay.
You know, it occurred to me that I have.
If that is too fast on the video playback from Doug, please let me know. I'll slow it back down.
Yet to make a video addressing wokeness, largely because I have been unable to find anyone who can provide me with some kind of coherent definition. Like this woman, she's an author who wrote a book on the subject and was asked to define the term.
Would you mind defining woke? Because it's come up a couple times, and I just want to make sure we're on the same page.
So, I mean, woke is sort of the idea that.
I feel sorry for this woman. I feel sorry for this woman. I suffer from feel sorry for his.
Yeah, it did.
Now, Richard.
What would have been great is if that woman had defined woke as feel sorry for ism. I mean, I think we can all appreciate, yeah, it went viral because she wrote a book on the topic, and then when asked, basically just biffed it right there on live TV or live internet. I don't know. I don't remember where that was actually done, but it went viral pretty quick. But if she defined it as feel sorry for ism, I think that would have gone viral too. Obviously not as much, probably. The fact that she's like completely drawing a blank and she's there to talk about the topic was not great.
Dalton, don't oppress this young lady. She's a victim. I mean, she was put on the spot. Okay. See, how does he do the lighting like this? Like, my blackness is just too black. Clip that for all the woke people. PineCreek admits that some black people are too black. No, that's not what I said. I'm talking about my shirt. Let's see here. Oh, this is so much fun. I can hardly wait. This is way better than talking to Christians. So much better than talking to Muslims. See, like, if I do this, Mr. Deity, help me. But
no, we don't care about your picture quality. There we go. Okay.
I need a choker. Why are men wearing jewelry? Well, there's nothing wrong with men wearing jewelry.
Really?
But what is that? It's almost like a Native American thing.
I think this is interesting. I think his video, he actually kind of, the one of the videos that he made, he kind of makes fun of him. He says something like, yeah, he's like poking fun at him. Says something like, I'm as good looking as Brad Pitt. But, you know, Mr. Deity.
I mean, he's so fashionable. If Mr. Deity's not gay, then I don't know.
I mean, if we're going to talk about, I mean, Mr. Deity has this kind of weird vibe where he's sort of like a cross between, he has the zaddy vibes of like a Jeff Goldblum combined with kind of the, facial hair of, the most interesting man in the world, and he looks like he smells good. That's as much as I'll say about that.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
It went viral. Fortunately for us, my good buddy Doug over on the PineCreek channel has finally defined wokeness for us.
Unlike that woman.
So science bless you, my friend. Let's take a look at what Doug
hang
has
on.
to say.
For the woke people listening who hate me, and don't hate me, but you just like think I have blind spots and all this sort of thing.
My guess is those aren't gummies. My guess is he's got Nicorette. He used to be a smoker, and I think he quit just a few years ago. So I wouldn't be surprised if he still, chews a little Nicorette from time to time.
Pay close attention to see if he actually disagrees with me on anything. Okay? Please pay attention. Are usually those who are suffering from an illness that I call feel sorry for-ism.
Great start, Doug. There are no groups in this country for and to whom anyone should feel the need to say sorry. This country, from its very founding, has held as a primary value, as stated in our founding documents, the Declaration of Independence, that all people are created equal. Okay, well, technically it says that all men, and by that they meant all
Yeah, okay, so my first part of the definition is woke people are those who suffer from an illness called feel sorry for-ism. Question. Does that mean I'm saying that you should never feel sorry for anyone? Is that what I'm saying?
Well, I don't know that in any previous definition of this he's ever given this before. Now, to be charitable, it probably doesn't mean that. The idea of like, but also, the idea of feel sorry for ism is like, well, you need to confront this kind of stuff, these kinds of things with like tough love. He said that kind of thing before. It's a little hard to know where that gets balanced out, especially if you're a conservative in the United States. Now, and the weird thing about this, I find this is kind of weak because, conservatives don't like usually being bogged down with being attached to some of the less flattering ideas of their fellow travelers. They have no problems assuming that leftists or liberals exist in a hive mind and they all agree on every actual issue. And so everybody holds the most radical views and some of the crazier views of each and every group. If you're a leftist, like me, this can get very frustrating when someone is attributing liberal ideas to you, which don't necessarily apply, especially when the liberal is, sort of like they believe in social justice and things like that, but they're very pro-capitalistic, pro-business kind of stuff, and that ain't gonna fly with a leftist usually. So, yeah. But anyway, when he tries to define something like this, we live in a world where, I mean, a few presidential elections ago, there was an exchange. I believe it was Ron Paul was running for the Republican nomination in the primary, and brought up the fact of like letting someone die in the hospital. They don't have any insurance and they can't pay. Should we just let them die? And a very conservative individual in the audience, he wasn't shown, but you heard his voice loud and clear say yes, or said the word "let him die." Something like that. Like it was, but it was an affirmative. Yeah, what? If you don't have the cash on hand and you get caught out and you get hurt, no one should save you. Right now, this is an individual that clearly doesn't know what the Hippocratic Oath is, and doesn't understand what the kind of medical ethics that medical professionals have to endure. But here he was, a staunch defender of libertarian, conservative America, values, and he had a terrible idea of how emergency medicine should be financed. And so Doug will be like, "Well, hey, what? Come on, people. When I say, don't feel sorry for, I didn't say you can't feel sorry for anybody ever. Well, you have to make that kind of clear because if you're in this group, it kind of depends on how far you want to go with it. And we've seen how far some conservatives can get with this stuff."
For those of you who've watched my channel many times, which I'm sure Mr. Deity, whenever I talk about politics, he clicks off, so he wouldn't know this. But many times I've said that I myself feel sorry for women. I feel sorry for women who have to compete against men in sports. Yeah.
Ha ha ha. See what any opportunity to trigger. No, that's just terrible. Well, I would feel sorry for somebody who, like a welterweight who was forced to compete with a heavyweight in boxing, right? I mean, why would that happen? Um, I don't know where I'm going with that. The sports thing is boring, and I think it gets brought up weird. I'm not trying to dismiss it or say that it's not important. I think participation in sports is an important idea, but the fact that the right wing thinks they've got, they've got this issue in hand, because sports, is, and trans people is just absolutely, ridiculous. Between Mr. Deity, Christopher Mowdy, and Professor Dave, who is Dad, Daddy, and Zaddy? It's an interesting question. I'm going to say that, for me, I think Dad is Professor Dave. The dad is Professor Dave. Um, Daddy, Daddy's going to be Mr. Deity, because he's got the fashion sense. Like I said, he looks like he wears cologne, good cologne, not the cheap stuff. Zaddy's going to be Christopher Mowdy. He's a musician. He plays the bass. Yeah, so I think that's how it's going to work. Although, to be fair, they all have a little bit of Dad, Daddy, and Zaddy energy. It's just, yeah. If you force me to put them into those categories, that's where I'm going to sort them.
So, what do I mean by this suffering from feel sorry forism? It's when you take it to the extreme, when you feel so sorry for someone that you excuse bad behavior,
Same.
where you treat people, adults, like infants. Oh, no, they can't take that because they're an oppressed minority.
And what does woke have to do with that? Again, this is one of those things where he thinks that the bleeding heart liberal does. This is just another outcropping of this, right? If you're concerned about people and their situations, their circumstances, well, you're being too empathetic and you're going to get taken advantage of. All these people are doing is looking for a handout and they're looking for an easy out. They just don't want to take personal responsibility. They don't want to work for it, right? These were the kinds of excuses that conservatives have been making these excuses all along. They're easy. They're lazy. The excuses, I mean. And the problem with this is that this is a projection, right? Conservatives have told themselves that the bleeding heart liberal philosophy means that you feel sorry for people to the point where you infantilize them and you basically you divorce any notion of personal accountability, from them. This is not actually a thing. This is a conservative oh my God, characterization of the quote unquote bleeding heart liberal. It's a caricature of a political identity. Not to say that there aren't people out there that might actually fulfill this role. There could be. But the vast majority of them don't. And because of this characterization and this little straw man that they put out there, when they hear anything that signals that, they immediately burp up the idea, aha, you're the bleeding heart liberal that infantilizes people and tells us that they should be held accountable for their own actions. To which a lot of leftists or liberals will be left blinking and wondering, what the hell are you talking about? What were we talking about beforehand? We're talking about the average poverty rates in Appalachia, and all of a sudden you're telling me, like, are you prepared to tell Cletus he's a bum because he doesn't have a job yet? Like, what the hell does that have to do with the unemployment rate of Appalachia? Anyway,
Oh, no, you can't expect that of them. That's what I mean by feel sorry forism. I'm not saying you should never, ever feel sorry for anyone or any person for any reason. No. And so, but he's being sarcastic here. So I'm sure Mr. Deity is smart enough to understand that, but probably not a lot of his followers.
White men, all white men who
nice. Okay, now that's not entirely fair because not a lot of his followers. Well, that doesn't seem very nice because, well, the smart followers, we already know who those were. They were the patrons, right? They're giving money to Mr. Deity. And they're not entirely happy with this particular coverage because maybe it's a little too left, or they don't like the fact that, Mr. Deity is kind of like doing a little poke and make fun of PineCreek. And maybe those patrons, maybe their politics do run more that way. They just, hey, we just want to hear you talk about how dumb some of these fundamentalists are. I don't care that you have thoughts and feelings about politics or any of this other kind of stuff. Maya has got a great burn here. So, not letting trans people have health care because you don't think they have a proper grasp on their emotions isn't treating adults like infants? Excellent point. And a sick burn. Maya gets the award. That's probably going to be the scorcher there. I'm going to try to remember that if I ever get into a conversation with Doug again about trans issues. I'll just be like, aha. I think someone else actually made a point similar to that. I think it was Stephanie. Anyway.
who owned property. But the point is, this country has been relentless in its pursuit of equality for all people because it says so right there in black and parchment. These are the ideals which have made
Yep.
America exceptional and great. I mean, just look.
Yeah, this is sarcasm, though. I would love to have Mr. Deity on and say, do you believe the United States is an exceptional and great country? Lean yes, lean no. I think it's hard, under my definition of woke, for a woke person to quickly say yes.
Exceptional and great. No, it's not. I probably considered woke, and I would say yes, it is exceptional and great, but it depends on what we're talking about. It's a great big country, and it's exceptional that we imprison more of our people than any other country on the planet. Just those are just two examples. Done and done.
They would be like the pro-Palestinian activist supporters. Whenever you ask questions like,
What?
"Is what Hamas did at that music festival? Do you condemn that? Is that bad?"
I don't have to condemn it. It was bad. They just went in and murdered a bunch of people. What's the point of this?
They might say yes, but they'll very quickly say, "But it's very understandable from the years of oppression from the Israelites, the Israelis." That's immediately where they go to justify it. This is what I mean by suffering from feel sorry forism. That you can't, that you
No, I don't think so. If somebody is trying to do that with Hamas, I think they're probably barking up the wrong tree. I don't feel sorry for Hamas. I feel sorry for the fact they go and do something that hideous and it gets a lot of innocent Palestinians killed because, like the straw man, bleeding heart liberal that he's talking about here, that can't make a distinction between Hamas and the citizens, that's what a lot of Israeli military types are like. So when you have to condemn Hamas, you have to basically condemn every living person, every living Palestinian in Gaza, and you don't have to do that. So yeah, yeah. My If I'm going to feel sorry for anybody, it's going to be for like the family, the people that got hurt, the survivors who lost their loved ones because of the shit that Hamas did, and for all the people that are going to get hurt right back by the Israeli military, and all the people that are going to mourn their loss because indiscriminate violence is going to be met on them as well. Only for whatever reason it'll be somehow justified in certain circles. So sorry to get too political about it, but I think this is a dumb equivalence to try to pull up here.
can look even at a minority oppressed person and say, "You suck there. You made a mistake there. You are a bad person there, you oppressed minority person." That's very hard for a woke person to say. They might admit it if you pull it out of them, but their first reaction is, "You can't blame them because look what they've gone through." No, you can blame them.
Who is he talking? Does he know a single left-wing person? And I don't mean liberal at this point, because I'm sure wherever he's at, and he lives in Tucson. Tucson, I think, as far as I know, it's a pretty bright red part of Arizona, which is a pretty bright red state, with the exception of whatever's going on in Phoenix, because it did flip blue last election. But this idea that I just can't find any liberals that will hold people individually responsible for doing dumb shit. I don't know anyone like that, and I know some very liberal people. Not left wing like me, left wing in the sense that I don't really like capitalism and am a socialist. No, I'm talking about just liberal people who they like business and they like the corporate world, but they also support LGBTQ rights and want everybody to get along and those kinds of things. I've not heard one of them be incapable of telling someone that they suck because they've done something stupid, or when talking about somebody goofing up, not holding them personally accountable for it. I've just never seen this. I don't know who he's talking about. And I'm hoping that he'll drop the name. He'll just, damn it, Sally, you're such a bleeding heart liberal.
This is called personal responsibility. And then the very smart woke atheist will say, "Well, Doug, aren't you a determinist? I mean, if you're a determinist, then really it's not their fault and there's no moral accountability."
At the Pledge of Allegiance, okay, daily as a child.
Howdy, Pat. Good to see you. Yeah, Adnan is. How many Israeli military types do you know who say condemning Hamas means we need to condemn every living soul living inside the Gaza Strip? Not the military types themselves. This is one of those things where I think things get a little confused. I don't have anything against Israeli soldiers, members of the IDF. I don't. In fact, I think Israel, as far as I know, still has compulsory military service. I think that a lot of Israeli people have very different opinions about this, and it's clearly not unified because a lot of them are not happy with what's going on. If I say Israeli military types, I'm talking about some of the higher ups and some of the claims that have been coming from these shot callers. There are dissenters probably in that rank, but they don't. Cooler heads don't seem to be. Well, I don't think they've actually started a ground invasion yet, so maybe cooler heads are prevailing. But some of the rhetoric coming out from you know, the spokespersons, the mouthpieces for their military, the things that they've been saying are not good. Whether the military types, the actual soldiers and stuff, no, I wouldn't condemn them. I don't think that they're going to be put in a position where their opinion matters much at all because they're soldiers.
I and every kid in America pledged themselves to liberty and justice
I did.
for all.
I was raised in Canada, so I didn't have to do that. But
see you later, Titan Uranus. He's going to a poker thing. He will be listening. Thanks for listening in, but good luck with your poker tourney.
when I became a U.S. citizen in February of this year, I had a pledge allegiance to the United States. But just like the marriage to my wife, there are markers in my life where I would no longer pledge allegiance, where I would change my mind. And my wife killed my kids, our kids. She's no longer my wife. Unless
Watch this.
she was forced to under duress, and she actually killed my kids with some moral dilemma of saving the world, or she had some type of disease. But still, even if she had a tumor on her brain, like, she's no longer the wife I married, right?
But would you? Okay, but I'm just going to ask. Okay, those are circumstances. But doesn't she suck for killing your kids? So, like, if she did this, that would be terrible. Unless, and then starts listing circumstantial reasons why it might not be a deal breaker, or might not exactly lead to the kind of personal condemnation he would level at somebody who, like, I don't know, lost all their money. You know, they just end up poor and and destitute. Like, I don't. Just, way to go, Doug. Way to go.
So even with the Pledge of Allegiance, you should question it. You should always question your leaders. And I think Mr. Deity and I would agree with this. That's the crazy thing about this. I think he and I are the same in so many ways. The
No.
only difference is
The only difference. Okay, what's the only difference? Jewelry? Is it jewelry or cologne?
this is the difference between people in general. It's the difference between soft love versus tough love. Women, mostly, and abused men, mostly. Oh, yeah, people are going to freak out when I say this. They will lean towards soft love. Men, mostly, and the not abused, stable people, mostly. When I say stable, I mean not abused. Will be more
What?
open to the tough love type of thing.
This is unmitigated bullshit. Like, what? I don't know what the hell he's talking about. And now, I'm not an abused person. So I can't say. But I don't think that I would make the distinction or try to make some kind of equivalence with someone who's been abused equals unstable. I don't know what that means. There are plenty of people that I've met in my life who had tough childhoods, and by tough, I'm using tough nicely here. Like, they struggled to survive their parents physically, and are plenty stable. And otherwise, people who had relative, very kind and caring parents, and due to some of those circumstances, like like a tumor or something like that, turn out to be less than stable. So I'm not exactly sure what Doug's trying to do with this example, this tough love versus soft love. And soft love is for the ladies and for abused guys and people that enjoy granola with soy milk. And then there's the tough love, which is for steak eaters and people that enjoy a good game of poker, who are willing to calls it like they sees it. No, just miss me with that shit.
We need both. We need each other. Sometimes tough love is needed. Sometimes soft love is needed. Sometimes making excuses, say, well, come on, have some compassion. This person's been through a lot. You need that sometimes. Sometimes you also need a guy like me to say, you're a douchebag. Just because you're black doesn't excuse that behavior. Just because you're trans doesn't excuse you from going into women's sports or whatever. No. You need both in society. Thanks, Hank, Flamio, did you change your name? I joined the Unitarian Universalist Church. Oh, no, don't do that. Don't join the Unitarian Universalist Church. They're a bunch of wusses. Have a high five to help me celebrate. No, no, no. When you believe in everything, you believe in nothing. And that's what the Unitarian Universalist Church, I think I know who they are. No, no. I have more respect for those conservative Baptists and those universal.
I don't doubt that. I really don't doubt that at all. Hey guys, if you don't engage in tough love, you're as unstable as all women. Yeah. Yep. Good to see you, Jail Warren. Literally came in on you're a douchebag. Now I need self-esteem. And self-esteem boost. Yeah, sorry about that. I was just reading a comment from Christopher Mowdy. I didn't really say D-bag. He did. It was all his fault.
Unitarian kumbaya people. Anyhow, let's get back.
I kind of like the libertarian Christians, though. They're willing to, like, yeah, I love God, asterisks, note, put a pin in it.
To Mr. Deity. Thanks for the donation.
Which is exactly what this country has been providing for all of its people.
Hi, Ed.
Since its founding, Black people, women, minorities, the LGBTQ communities who have traditionally been treated terribly. So no one needs...
Yeah, I know exactly. I can empathize with Mr. Deity. Communities that have been treated terribly. My Mennonite ancestors. Persecuted. Fleeing from country to country.
Needs to feel sorry for anyone. Great point, Doug.
Yeah, great point, Doug. A point I never made. That you should never feel sorry for anyone for any reason. No, never made that point.
That's not what Mr. Deity's doing there, is it? Like, if you go and define wokeism as feel sorry for-ism, and then equate it with the lady emotions, he didn't use those words. I'm using those words because that sounds like out-of-touch grandpa talk. And I think Doug can relate to that kind of verbiage. And then try to say, well, that's not the point that I made. I wasn't saying that you can't ever feel sorry for people. Okay. Then why is woke feel sorry for-ism? Oh, well, let me clarify. It's when you overdo it and then infantilize people with your feel sorry for-ism and then basically just provide them carte blanche. They don't have any accountability for their actions. Oh, well, that would have been interesting to know. The reason it would have been interesting to know earlier is because I don't know of anyone who's even capable of doing that consistently. Like, you'd have to really work to, like, kind of hold that in there. You'd have to make a go at that. Most people don't have a problem blaming other people for stuff, individually or collectively. It's sort of a thing that we do.
This is what Vesna was talking about, strawmanning. I never said strawmanning, but she did. I never made the point that you can never feel sorry for people. My point is that it becomes a problem when your feel sorry for-ism is to such an extreme, radical bent that you start excusing bad behavior. You start viewing your fellow human, your fellow adult human, as mere infants that are not capable of doing anything for themselves, and you have to help them, and if you don't help them, they are powerless. They have no agency. This is what I mean by feel sorry for-ism.
We don't.
What's to say here?
And that's precisely what Mr. Deity is criticizing. That old, crappy, out of touch, conservative attitude. That's what he's parroting here.
People are often people who are followers of some type of critical theory, critical race theory, for example, who view life in terms of oppressors and the oppressed, the victims. Now remember, see if Mr. Deity is going to disagree with anything I've said so far. So far, he hasn't.
What? Sorry. He'll do this a lot. Doug's going to do it because he's not specifically, blatantly, explicitly verbalizing a disagreement. All that sarcasm, I guess, just doesn't. All that doesn't matter. I mean, like, at this point, I start to question: like, does Doug understand how human communication works?
I've disagreed with him that he thinks that feel sorry for-ism means you never feel sorry for people.
Another spectacular point from Doug. People, there are no victims. Do not let yourself get caught up in this victim.
Victim mentality. This is funny. Yes, Jail Warren. I will be covering that one. I've watched a little bit of it. There was a lot of stuff going on today, and by a lot of stuff other than work, I was getting a lot of comments on my last video from Doug about the medical stuff from the video I covered yesterday. Yeah, I will be covering that one. A little bit I saw, that is weird. That is really weird. But yeah, I'm hoping to. There's a longer video that I'm probably going to cover first, but I'm hoping to get to that one, uh, hopefully early next week, because I got a couple other ones lined up. But yeah, okay. Victim mentality. Don't get into this victim mentality.
Nonsense. And for
See, this is sarcasm. So for those of you for the autistic atheists in the crowd, I need to explain this to you. For all those Sheldons in the crowd from the Big Bang Theory, he's using sarcasm. Surely, Mr. Deity knows deep in his heart of hearts that I believe that there are such things as victims in the world.
For Hitchin's sake, do not let the woke mob tell you that this country's laws and entire legal system have been hijacked for.
That's a good list. don't let them tell you that the laws have been hijacked. Yeah. And there you go. Aunt Jer writes, nobody's excusing bad behavior of marginalized people. We're just trying to say treat them like everyone else. That's like when Candace Owens, or Candace Owens, oh, I get you, kept insinuating that the left was treating. Where's the rest of this? Yes, George Floyd like he was a saint, and she kept pointing out all the bad things he did. That's not the point. The point was treat him like everyone else and let him have his day in court. Agreed. And that was sort of the issue too with the police coverage too, because in a lot of ways the George Floyd thing ended up kind of revealing something like if you were having a bad day and you were losing it, I mean, regardless of the other circumstances that were going on, the crime that he was supposedly involved in was a nonviolent one. Supposedly he had like a fake $20 bill. That's what he got called on, and he was clearly not doing it well. I mean, he was already hyped up. He was already out of sorts. He had a history of this kind of thing. And if you watch the video where they're trying to get him in the car, he's clearly losing it. Like he does not have control. He can't self-regulate. He's panicking. He's terrified. And the way those cops, I don't really need to describe it to anybody. The way they take it from there is terrifying. Regardless of it doesn't have to be skin color. This isn't about feel sorry for-ism. If you were in that situation, just imagine if those were the cops that were there. Now, most of us think, well, here's the thing: the cops are supposed to protect, the town. They're supposed to protect the public, the citizenry. They were supposed to protect him, even if he's a bad guy, quote unquote. Even if he did a bad thing, he's still a citizen, and he still needs to be. And he's in their custody. He's in their care, and they screwed that up horribly. And that's more than just sobering. It was nightmarish. And the fact that we got to see it like more or less almost in real time, and it blew up on it, and like that was this thing. The idea, the backlash on this from people like Candace Owens and others, it was reflective of the same kind of thing from Doug. No, you need to be able to point at what he did and say he sucks, he's a loser. Yep, okay, yep. If he's walking around with fake money, funny money, he probably shouldn't be doing that. That's obviously illegal. That's on him. He shouldn't be doing drugs. He should probably be taking better care of himself. Yep. So then you just ask somebody like, so did he deserve it? Did he get what he deserved? I'm sure Doug would be like, no, of course not. Okay. So can I feel sorry for him for what happened to him then, and also acknowledge that he made mistakes? Am I capable of doing that? Or am I a goofy liberal that will just inevitably let my pity run rampant and fanalize the guy and then completely forget about a personal accountability? When the only thing I was really concerned about was equal treatment under the law. But now we can't have that conversation because somebody like Doug is telling me that I'm a tree hugging liberal / woman, because all women do this. This is the leap all women take. Yeah, great stuff. And old and tired. This is stuff that we've been hearing since the 20s, the 10s. and I'm just talking about kind of the same language in American political, cultural, exchanges.
for hundreds of years.
And Shirley, quit calling me Shirley, airplane movie. Surely he knows that I think these laws, like slavery, terrible, as Charles Barkley would say. But we don't have it anymore. Even redlining it's been gone since what, the late 60s, early 70s? Bad. No longer here. We've improved. Our society has evolved. Thumbs up.
Hear what he said there. He said that our society has improved. We've evolved. There's no redlining. If you go and look up redlining and pull up the news, just Google it. Let's see. There was a bank in Chicago, I think. Yeah. Associated Press from January 12th of 2023. Bank to pay $31 million. Redlining settlement. And this is just one example. There was another one in Los Angeles. Again, this is from January of this year. This was an LA-based City National Bank on Thursday of discrimination by refusing to underwrite mortgage. Oh, this is the LA one. The other one I saw was a Chicago one. Predominantly Black and Latino communities requiring the bank to pay more than $31 million in the largest redlining settlement in department history. The largest one in department history was just settled January 12th of this year. And this is not from Granola Times. This is not from navel-gazing Birkenstock.com. This is from the Associated Press, just reporting that the Justice Department accused this bank. They settled on this whole thing because they were underwriting mortgages. They were engaged in redlining. The article then goes on to say, and I'm sorry I don't have it up here, but switching tabs in this thing is not easy on a laptop. City National is the latest bank in the past several years to be found systematically avoiding lending to racial and ethnic minorities, a practice that the Biden administration has set up its own task force to combat. The Justice Department said that between 2017 and 2020, City National avoided marketing, blah, 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 blah. Yep, and that just goes into say how they went about doing it. So, yeah. Doug, if you need sources for that, Google it. But that's a brand new one, and there was another one in Chicago. Redlining has not gone away.
To keep any group of people a permanent underclass, or that any group has systematically been kept from the kind of equality and justice we just talked about. How could that even be true when our Declaration of Independence and our Pledge of Allegiance are so clear about equality and justice? Think about it, people.
Yeah, and again, he's using sarcasm, but I think a part of him understands and realizes that our Constitution, the American Constitution, pretty good. This is why I think Mr. Deity won't come on and talk to me.
Yeah, I mean, it's got problems.
But he's invited anytime. Email me. Formal invite, because I will get Mr. Deity to admit these things. A, the United States is a great country to live in. B, in fact,
it's okay. I don't think it's great. It's okay. It depends on how much cash you have.
It's exceptional. C, Constitution is amazing.
No, there's better ones.
D, sometimes people feel sorry for them too far. And sometimes tough love is needed. And sometimes people are responsible for their actions, even if they're an oppressed minority. He would agree with all that. And I'd make him admit this. And then I would say, see, we're the same.
Just like that, right? Like he doesn't really even have to have the conversation with Mr. Deity now. He's already had it. I mean, and he's really good at this kind of thing. He said so before, so like that's just how it's going to be. Yeah, he'll talk the jewelry right off Mr. Deity.
Because when you do, you'll realize that there are no oppressors and no oppressed. Our laws couldn't possibly have been used in that way. So
far he's not disagreeing with me that wokeism is about the focus of oppressors and oppressed. He's just saying that sarcastically that I don't think there's oppressors and oppressed, which he's being sarcastic. So of course he understands that I realize there's oppressors and oppressed.
We're all
Okay, but do you? This is interesting because he tried to say before, when he was laying out his definition for wokeism, that it was an overgrowth of this feel sorry forism stuff, and it was about this mentality of looking at the world in terms of the paradigm, the dynamic of the oppressed versus the oppressor. So now he's okay. No, they actually have that, but okay. So what's the problem then with acknowledging that would be kind of woke? That there are certain groups that are oppressed and certain groups that do the oppressing. So it sounds like Doug is trying to say he acknowledges that. I would like to know which specific groups he acknowledges are oppressed or doing the oppressing. That's step 2.
Equal. And by definition, you just can't have the oppressed and the oppressor in an equal society. That's just math. What these
Math is hard for some, most.
what these woke folk are doing is they're whining and they're crying to get you to, Doug nailed it, feel sorry for certain groups so that we'll all do things to.
Yeah, and he's being sarcastic here, but he's also telling the truth that a lot of the whining and crying you hear in discourse, let's say the topic is transgenderism or whatever, it is coming mostly from the left, from the woke. And this is just obvious. It's because you guys are so bigoted and homophobic and callous and hard-hearted. You have no empathy. It's this crying and whining that, why can't you be compassionate like us?
That's the problem. Isn't that conservatives don't have empathy? And empathy is not as important as sympathy. Sympathy is something that you can cultivate. Empathy is too, but some people, just for whatever reason, empathy is not going to necessarily be there. The problem with a lot of conservative ideology is that it's built around the idea that you should not pay attention. You should pay attention to yourself first and foremost, and then next to your family. It's very self-centered and then tribalistic. That's essentially how things kind of outgrow from there. The idea of getting into the feel sorry forism thing is really about like whether or not you care about groups really outside yourself. Most of the time, most conservatives, especially if they're social, the kind of social conservatives, the one that kind of identify with capital C conservative as like a cultural identity, are not going to be real. At least they weren't. And maybe with younger groups that's starting to evolve a little bit, but the ones that I'm seeing, guys like from everything from like Tim Pool, Ben Shapiro, and Nick Fuentes, they seem to be getting worse. Just the absence of humanity, and it's put on. They're actively trying to suppress their humanity. They think that this is a disciplined way to live. But what you need to do is just suppress your emotions at all costs. Don't approach anything with emotions. You can't help it. The fact that they're intrigued by conservative ideology was in and of itself an emotional reaction, and then they sort of spend their time kind of like kicking themselves in order to maintain this facade of toughness and tough-mindedness and facts don't care about your feelings kind of stuff. Now, for certain types, psychos, this is easy. It's easy to maintain. I don't have to worry about it. If you're not psychotic and you do tend to have, just some emotional, a relatively normal emotional range, but you don't have good emotional intelligence. You're not great at regulating your emotions, especially when expressing them around other people in constructive ways. You will find ways to probably do those in negative ways. And one of those is to pretend or act like what you're doing is punching your emotions down into a bag and then front loading only the big brain Vulcan logic stuff up front. And I just states it like I sees it. Facts don't care about your feelings. I'm sorry I've used that twice now, but that's sort of the thing that they're trying to do. It's clearly emotionally driven for most. Some people who are probably a little bit more on that kind of psychopathology spectrum kind of thing will probably be better at actually not having the emotional reactions because their emotional range isn't the same. And for a lot of this kind of stuff too, it's kind of interesting when they kind of talk about this. Remember the accusations of virtue signaling. If you care about these other people, right? Ultimately, it's not about the fact that you care about them. You care about yourself. And what makes you feel good about yourself is pretending that you care about other people. Right. And you like the fact that when you do that, you get a little reward from outside people. Do you know who actually talks like this? And I've heard them say this to me. Psychopaths will do this because psychopaths will kind of consciously put in the effort to make the effort to, I'm going to be nice because if I'm nice, I get this back. They're very transactionally minded. Again, I'm being very general about this. Christopher Mouty and others will probably, slap me around for this and correct me later. Please do. But there is something to this idea of sort of intention, the intentional transactional nature of, I will be charitable to this person because I will get something back, including some social cachet from these other people who will see me being nice, and that will make me rise in their estimation. It seems to be a blind spot for people who think that that's how things work. They then project that and say that's how it works for everybody. It escapes them that there are people that just care about other people legitimately, deeply, are concerned about the welfare of other people. But because their emotional experience is, no, I do this, and I know other people that do this just to make good, just to get over, just to get an advantage, they're doing that too. That is very prevalent in Ayn Rand objectivism because she was kind of a nutter. And it's very, very heavily interlaced into conservative political ideology as how you're supposed to behave as an individual. The weird thing is that I think a lot of these guys think that that's stoic, and it isn't.
Right? Well, there's a downside to this hyper compassion. Like compassion can blind you like nothing else. For all you very highly compassionate people out there, you know who you are, and I'm all for compassion, but you have to admit to me this: you've been duped in life way more than me. Everybody's been duped at times from other people, but the highly compassionate people, the people who have this proclivity to feel sorry for other people immediately, you have been scammed and duped way more than people with personality types like myself.
Personality types like yourself. What is your personality type? Snarky, lacking feeling, lacking compassion, or having the right amount of compassion? Like, I think this is interesting that these people are just going to get duped because they're too compassionate. I know people that have been duped that are just the absolute hardest people on the planet. It depends. Social engineering has gotten to a point, and most scams have gotten to a point that just depends on what they play off of. Not every scam plays off your empathy or sympathy. The real point of a scam is to know your mark. And some people, you play to their greed. Others, their transactional nature. Everybody's got a weakness. So what he's talking about here just does not make any sense. Like, what he's trying to do is spin the idea, like, if you're empathetic, if you're too empathetic, too sympathetic, and I think that these guys think that those are equivalent things, then you are weak. You are susceptible to being taken advantage of. I don't think that that's a thing. It's not the empathy and the sympathy that makes you susceptible to being taken advantage of. It's that person's judgment. And their judgment could be lacking in any other capacity of their psychological experience, not just empathy, but also how they handle things like anger, rage, retribution, joy, any of these kinds of things. People can overdo it. Their self reward mechanism: get loaded, get drunk, pass out. Do you think that that's a healthy mechanism, a healthy way to handle your sense of your feelings of excitement or enthusiasm or joy? But people do it. It just, there's lots of dysfunctions about these kinds of things. He's identifying one because I don't think that he understands or appreciates empathy or sympathy pretty much, but he does have a tendency to fixate on it and identify it as a weakness. And it ain't the only weakness. It's not necessarily a weakness. Anything is potentially a weakness for people. Just depends on that person's thing. This is odd to me. This just seems poorly thought out.
Admit it. I've heard many women come up to me and say, "Yeah, I fell for it. I mean, this person looked like they were in need, and the person came to the door, and I fell for it." And this actually, I think, happens more to women than men because women tend to be more compassionate. And this is my point with wokeism. If you have this hypersensitivity, this hyper compassion, this feel sorry forism, you will be duped.
Okay. If you've got the hyper stuff, if you've got the hyper compassion, the hyper empathy. Okay, maybe. How many people suffer from that? According to Doug, it's everybody in the woke cult. The woke cult are the people that overdo the sympathy. They overdo the empathy. They're the ones that infantilize people. How many people are we talking about? Like, is it everybody that voted for Biden? Or is it just people who identify as Democrats? Or is it people who identify as libs or leftists? Or how do we chase these people down and figure out, like, hey, because we need to let them know, my man, my lady, you are susceptible to getting duped because of the overgrowth of your empathy and such. The problem with you is that you care too much. You need to harden your heart a little bit there and tell these people to jog on from time to time. Don't try to help them too much. There are people that I know that will overextend themselves trying to help, their loved ones, their kids, sometimes strangers. Sure, that's out there. They will overextend themselves, and sometimes they need people in their lives to kind of tell them to rein it in. Are they being duped or taken advantage? They might every once in a while get this, but do those people infantilize the people that they're taking care of and excuse their behavior? Or like just kind of pardon them, give them like a blank check? No. I know a few people that are actually like that. I mean, they will run themselves down trying to take care of people, and they will give them lots of chances. Do they hold them accountable for the things that they've done in the past? Yep. Do they blame them personally for the screw ups they've made? Absolutely. They'll tell it to their face. So I'm still not entirely sure where he's trying to go with this. This just seems like more of a caricature than anything else. And he's trying to prop up this fake example of these types of people to justify a definition for woke that is neither accurate nor functional. Daniel Cooper writes, so what cardstock and typeface on our Tux business cards? Well, you know that the cardstock is bone. I can't remember what the inks were. Good reference.
You will more likely be blinded to things like science. Like even 6-year-old, 7-year-old, 8-year-old boys will outcompete 6-year-old, 7-year-old, 8-year-old girls in sports. And you think, well, we just got to be compassionate to transgender people, when there is a biological, scientific difference between males and females. And it is unfair. That's a great word to use with woke people because they can resonate with it. It is unfair to have any biological men and women sports.
I don't think that that's true. And I don't think that he can back that up. In any sport, it is always unfair to have any biological men compete with any biological women. Any males competing with females in any sport. It's always unfair. Ooh, Doug. No, I don't think that's right. I think we can find some sports where men and women are mostly equal.
And if that means transgender people cry because they're not allowed to win sport, let them cry. But then the hyper woke people say, but then they might commit suicide. So that's another, like, falling for it, being duped. You don't want people to commit suicide, Doug, do you? Like, people.
Okay. That little comment was really stupid.
Who are woke, who have this hypersensitivity and are very compassionate by nature.
Yes, that's the only reason why we would be concerned about groups of people unaliving themselves. That would be the only reason. He's tried to say at the beginning that this is not about him saying that you can't ever feel sorry for anybody. He didn't say that. It's about taking it too far now. That's the idea. Wokeism is I feel sorry for ism. It's when it's when empathy turns to pity and dismissal of consequences and accountability. Okay. But now it's starting to smell like it's just sympathy. Sympathy's now bad too. If we hear about a social problem going on with a particular group of people and they're miserable enough where a significant number of them are taking drastic steps, the worst kind of drastic steps, well, if they can't handle it, it seems to be Doug's thing. Like, hey, easy, check your empathy, check your sympathy. Don't go too far now. In exchange for what? Are there steps that we can take to make their lives better? Yes. Will those require changes and maybe some sacrifices and a little bit of adjustment on our part? Yeah. Are they worth it? Probably, if it saves lives. Do I want to do it? Nope. Feel sorry for ism. Can't be bothered. Fuck off. That's what I'm hearing here. Hey, you need to be tough-minded. You need to know when you're just being taken for a ride. Oh, okay. So those people, quote unquote, with those problems, quote unquote, are taking you for a ride, quote unquote. Sorry, I had to complete the set. Nice, Doug. Nice. How do we identify all these people again, who don't deserve help versus the ones that do?
They can be so easily manipulated. Don't let people manipulate you.
Stop being a sucker. Like, if this is part of your nature, he's already gone into this. If this is part of your nature, there's very little you can do to not be duped. The point of being duped, getting good and successfully fooled, is when somebody plays to a real weakness and you never saw it coming. It's, yeah, you can do things to keep your defenses up. You should try to use good judgment. But you should also know, like don't be duped. Like, okay, I'll do my best. I can't guarantee that I won't make a mistake or that somebody won't take advantage of me at a particular time. It at the lowest point in my life, and in a weak spot that I didn't see coming, they take advantage of me. Oh, I should have taken Doug's advice and just not gotten duped. If only I'd listened.
The truth hurts, doesn't it?
Reverse or
That ain't truth. That's just weird. Like, ugh.
correct the allegedly on
It's like, listen, it's a little bit like, I want to kind of blame it on like Archie Bunkerisms kind of thing. Oh God, yeah, that's what I got to start doing. Archie Bunker for the thumbnails from here on
ongoing
out.
effects of this imagined depression and victimization. Don't fall for it. Don't do it, people. All right, let's see what else is here.
Woke people tend to be very unhappy, sad, miserable people. Woke people tend to be female. I would say it's not insignificant. My guess is it's close to 60%. And I think the reason for that is because women, which is adult females, tend to be more emotional. Hugh Anonymous says, didn't you create a second channel for political talk? Yes, I did, but I don't think I'm going to use the second channel anymore. Everything will be on this channel. I view, you can disagree with me on this, but I view this form of wokeism as a religion, as a way to get hope, meaning, and a purpose. It has rules, things that you need to do, and if you don't, you're ostracized by the in group. So if wokeism is a religion, in my view, then why am I talking about it on a political channel? It should be on the religious channel, right? And I understand a lot of people are going to leave my channel, and a lot of them already have. I can always tell, like, I'll lose 20 subscribers at least, which is nothing, but I'll lose 20 subscribers today, right now. But it's always so funny when people think that hurts me. I do this for me, not for you. You can see it in my face. I'm genuinely, sincerely enjoying this. This is fun to me. So you're not hurting me by unsubscribing. I'm not doing this for the money like Rationality Rules or Mister Deity.
Is there something wrong with doing YouTube for the money? I mean, I do kind of agree with him. I'm more the same. I have a full-time job. That's my income. This is not even really a side hustle. It's just a hobby. I enjoy tearing this kind of stuff, kind of content apart. But for those who can actually make a go of it, make an income of it, I don't think that that's necessarily bad. I'm always a little suspicious if somebody's trying to kind of, well, no, not even then. Just to a certain degree. If you've even got to try to, like, I know that Mister Deity does. He doesn't use profanity. He tries to bleep his stuff out. He does edited content because that tends to get better audiences. It's easier to monetize that kind of stuff if it's edited and packaged up front rather than being live. Fewer mistakes, fewer, hey, avoid the controversial topics, that kind of stuff. But, to each their own. And, Doug is a pro-business guy. He's a finance dude. He just said that at the beginning. He said that quite often. So the fact that Mr. Deity and Rationality Rules are making money at this should be something he congratulates them for. They're doing something that they both appear to be good at. Rationality Rules does have good production value. Mr. Deity definitely does as well. Mr. Deity does have other things that he does, I think, on the side, because I think he was in the filmmaking industry and film production stuff before. Okay, so they've got successful YouTube channels that make them money. They got Patreons. This is their income stream. This is what they're doing. I got no problem with that, unless PineCreek is going to do, yeah, but they had to sell out. Rationality rules had to sell out to the woke mob. He's made that accusation. Um, yeah.
The extra income I get from this does not change my life one bit. So it's not an issue. So from now on, I think I won't even post anything, which is on the other channel, the political channel, which is sad because it has like 1,300 subscribers. It's monetized. So if there's any woke people here want to convert my political channel into a woke channel, I'll sell it to you. Make me an offer.
There you
Make me
go,
an
guys.
offer I can't refuse.
There you go, people. Boom. I think he's got about 1,400 subscribers on that one, on the PineCreek Politics.
When you say that woke people are more unhappy, do you base that on data? Good question. I think I could find you some data. There's data on women, especially suffering from depression, more mental health problems, and as I
Awesome. So all you have to do is now show that women are woke. That's it, right? And then, well, actually, no. You actually have to get people to settle on the fact that your definition of woke is a thing, which is feel sorry forism, which is ill defined at this point still. And then you have to equate that. That has to be something that all women either have a tendency towards or just blatantly struggle with. And then from that, you can then extrapolate out of that because women have higher rates, might be able to be shown to have higher rates of either depressive episodes or depression or other kinds of emotional or psychological health issues, mental health issues. Therefore, that's because they're woke. Therefore, feel sorry forism makes you unhappy and makes you feel bad. Am I okay? So did I take that illogic train? Did I hit all the stops necessary? I think everything got set on fire, so that's good.
said, most woke people are women because of this compassion. And if you think that's not scientific, I can provide data for that too. It is false to say that women are more emotional.
Yeah, that would be that would be fascinating. His idea of bringing data to this would be, well, here's a study that shows that more women than men suffer from depression or depression episodes. Okay, what does that have to do with being woke? Well, more women have this empathy thing because I'm a sexist, so that means that they're more likely to feel depressed, which means wokeism, since that's feel sorry forism, makes you sad. Because now it's getting hard to tell. Now it sounds like maybe wokeism is something that comes from women, not something that happens to women to make them sad and feel sorry for other people. Now I'm getting real confused. This is a real chicken and egg kind of conundrum here. Is he going to define this at all, ever? It'll be interesting to see Mr. Deity's second video on this to see where he goes.
Than men. That is false. But it's not false to say that women are more emotional than men on negative issues. That is true. You can fact check me. You can look it up for yourself. But that is true. And so this is why you don't see very many women at football games with face paint on, but you see men. They're more emotional.
Has he been to a football game? You see a lot of women there with face paint on, cheering, drinking beer, tailgating. More men are into football than women. I think that's relatively uncontroversial. A lot of women, though, are into sports. This is just a dumb. This is just kind of a kind of a sexist generalization that he's throwing out there without really backing it up. Oh, you're not going to see women out there with the face. No, I've never seen. Right. I didn't go to a Big Ten school. I don't know what it's like for everybody to show up at tailgate day for for a Big Ten football match. Sure, football match, football game. You can tell how many times I went. Yeah, none of the girls there had face paint on or waved the foam fingers around or anything like that. No, they were home knitting and sewing and talking about how sorry they felt for minorities. The men were out there with the face paint on, whooping and hollering and eating bratwursts and peeing outdoors.
On positive things. But on the negative things, men are not as emotional as women.
What?
And things like feeling sorry for the oppressed, these are negative issues.
So women get this, people. Women are more susceptible to the negative feels, and men get the positive feels, the feels of victory, joy, So it's not that men aren't emotional. It's just the emotions that we get are better. And we experience those happy emotions bigger, more bigly, and feel them better. But women, they get the bad emotions. And with the bad emotions, they descend into their pity parties of wokeness and sports hating. Um, Weird. This has gotten truly weird. This is why I wanted to cover it, because the longer he goes on, the stranger the things he says are becoming. WTF means woke. That's something that conservatives never define clearly. I will tell you right now what I think conservatives mean by woke. What conservatives mean by woke is anything they don't like, in a nutshell. But let's try to keep it clean. Usually, what will end up happening, a long time ago, back in the 90s, jeez, God, I'm old, there was a term that was used called politically correct. And it was basically used, I don't remember who the first one to use it, but you had the guy, Dinesh D'Souza, I think did a book or something like that and kind of coined it. Politically correct was anything basically that disagreed with them. If they wanted to turn around and make a comment, because in the 90s, you started getting into this kind of stuff: equal rights, women's rights, feminism, LGBTQ rights. Those things really started to kick up in the 90s. And anybody that stood up for traditional family values, sorry, I tried to go for like a Nixon thing there. The family, the country, this kind of stuff. The reason that you needed to be, if you were positive about that and supportive of that, well, that's politically incorrect nowadays. You need to be more open-minded and you need to be more inclusive and all this kind of stuff. That's politically correct. Spell women with a Y, we says. Get that man word and men word out of there. Uh, so this was just a way of kind of making a culture war and a divisive propaganda war about anything that conservatives didn't like. What woke has become is actually kind of sophisticated a little bit. It's a continuation of that kind of bullshit. But what happened was you had ding dongs like Jordan Peterson coming out and using terms like cultural Marxism, which was basically just a change up of a term called cultural Bolshevism. Cultural Bolshevism used to be a term used by fascists, literally, to kind of encapsulate everything they didn't like about the Bolshevists, and a lot of this was grounded in anti-Semitism and their collectivist ways and all this kind of stuff, right? So it was used as a way to kind of uh, a heuristic in a way, to basically you use that word to sum up everything bad about the Bolshevists. And the cultural Bolshevists would include the people that even side with them, or are fellow travelers, or are sympathetic to their views, or once wore a T-shirt that looked a little bit like one of their uniforms. Get them, that's a cultural Bolshevist. Cultural Marxist is essentially the same kind of enveloping thing. You use it to talk about people that want to get LGBTQ rights into schools and Sharia law enacted in local governments. Oddly, yes, people have actually conflated the two of them as being coming from the same groups. All this stuff is part of this postmodern woke fantasy. They didn't use the word woke, right? They had different words for it. It was either postmodernism or cultural Marxism, but those are a little harder and they roll off the tongue. They sound a little bit theoretical. But then you had things like the BLM movement. And when that came about, the term woke started to become more popular amongst different circles. And that became the word, conspicuously, obviously, that conservatives picked, because it was awesome that what they could do is they could simultaneously package everything that they had packaged under politically correct previously, and everything that they had packaged under cultural Marxism that they'd borrowed from fascist rhetoric from before, tuck those together and turducken them into the word woke, which they stole from the black community, which does two different things. One, it serves the original purpose of turning the word woke into a heuristic, which just encapsulates everything that is left wing and postmodern and icky and strange and scary about those people, those all caps quotations, insert your boogeyman here. And by putting it as using a word that they stole from the African American community, they could very implicitly but practically explicitly pin all of the bad things on African Americans. Pretty neat, huh? That's what woke means to conservatives, and that's why they use it so much. It's interesting too that, like, when you see like black conservatives using it that way, and I always kind of want to like scream a little inside, because it's like that word was co-opted by conservatives to make you look bad. and amongst especially because if they can connect cultural Marxism with something that a word that came out of your community, it's an immediate sell to white supremacists and racists who are already suspicious of black culture. So if anybody disagrees with that, please let me know. But that's sort of my summary of what I think. That is how I think woke turned into what it is from conservatives. And that's why it doesn't have any real meaning. It's just an allegation. These are the others. Woke is otherness, and it needs to be eliminated or ignored or legislated away, dismissed from public interaction, whatever. It is not feel sorry forism. Doug's attempt to connect feel sorry forism with woke is incredibly anemic, even for conservatives, which is funny. It's funny to see him trying to defend it this way because it just doesn't hold up. Actually, the actual conservative usage of the word woke is insidious as hell, and Doug's just not there yet. So this is Doug being the kind of Canadian Mennonite Catholic that he is, but he's tough-minded, tough love. You keep it up, Doug. Megalite says, that about sums it up. Make me think about the Iniko debacle. I'm not sure what that is. Still going. I went out, ate, drank, chatted up a friend, and came back. I don't have a life right now. It's a work day, Eventually I'll turn this off and get some late dinner.
But the funny thing about this is that when it comes to one issue, the trans issue, then there's a cognitive dissonance in women. Then they don't know what to do. And it's a battle of, it's not fair to women that men are competing against them. It's not fair to women that men are winning beauty pageants. 3 cheers for the patriarchy. But yet they have compassion for trans people. So it's like, what do I do? But I think the women are realizing, you know what? It's okay to let some trans people cry.
Over what, Doug? Over what are they crying over? Over what? Because if you listen to conservatives talk about LGBTQ issues as if those individuals are asking for special rights, when most of them are all of them are asking for equal rights, equal representation under the law, access to the same kind of public engagement in society as everyone else. So should they? No, I don't want to hear that. Let them cry. Nice, Doug. Nice. This is a guy that just became an American citizen. He's been living here as a Canadian, but just now has become one of us. I think he's only 5 minutes in. Yeah, he is. He's only about 5 minutes into his video. I'm over halfway through his coverage of it, so I don't think he's going to actually make it through the whole thing. So here we go.
On things that tend to be negative, like oppression, than men.
Amen, Doug. Amen. These women, so emotional with their hormones and their compassion for others and their empathy for the allegedly oppressed. I mean,
notice there's still absolutely nothing that Mr. Deity said so far where he's disagreeing with me.
Yes, if you just remove the sarcasm, sure. Just remove the whole point of the video. Yep, sure.
He's using sarcasm.
And any of the captions that he's putting up. Just forget that those happened. Or the video at the beginning where the woman struggles to define woke.
Sarcasm. But he's actually not disagreeing with anything I'm saying. In fact, I dare Mr. Deity, do you disagree that women are more emotional than men on negative things?
I would hope he would have the good sense to just laugh at that question like I did. Negative emotions and positive emotions? Like, welcome to Doug's psychology laboratory where he just makes things up. Mowdy, you said that you were out eating and drinking and chatting like a well-adjusted human being. How dare you? I think I made a point about some of the psychology stuff, and Doug was talking about stuff, about women feeling more negative emotions and men feeling more positive emotions. If you haven't seen it, watch it eventually whenever you have time, and then get back to me, because If you didn't see that, I'd be really interested to hear what your reaction is. Megalite says, "Why does it sound like I'm listening to Stefan Molyneux?" It does kind of sound a little bit like Molyneux. Yes.
Maybe Google it first and then get back to me.
You know, some of these women will actually say that the reason
And abused men. I got to say this. It's the truth, but it's going to hurt people. And I got to say this because it's an observation I have made on this issue over the years.
Okay.
Men who tend to be woke have suffered from some type of mental illness, like depression, anxiety, have been
Before anybody loses it, remember his definition of woke is not the long definition that I gave. His definition of woke is just somebody who feels sorry for lots of people too much. So the feel sorryism sufferer is somebody who
abused,
is
either
mental health
physically,
issues.
sexually, emotionally, verbally by their parents or
Okay.
someone else. And so it makes sense. It's completely natural. So they have felt this tremendous form of oppression in their own lives.
Yeah, it's not at all natural for a person who is severely abused to shut down, close themselves off from their emotions, divorce themselves from their own empathy, and then treat the rest of the world with a lot of dismissive cruelty. We've never seen examples of that. Huh. I'm just wondering. Every abused man ends up turning into the navel gazing, sandal wearing, granola munching, tree hugging, bleeding heart liberal. Okay.
And so then when they see it to other people, they're more likely to empathize with them, like the African American in the United States or a trans person or whatever. You look at the atheist content creators on YouTube who are woke, based on my definition. And you've seen that they've admitted in the past that they have suffered from some type of illness. And I'm not knocking them. I'm not blaming them.
Okay, then what's the point of bringing it up?
Just saying that this as a fact.
They're okay. So they have a mental illness, and then they're woke. Only the woke atheists.
People like me who have been raised in stable homes with great parents who I can't remember a time when I've been angry.
Whoa. Okay. So do you get mental health issues because you didn't have stable parents? You see that? What's to say that the people that he's let's say that let's give him that. Okay. So these woke atheists out there, they've admitted that they have mental health issues. Okay. Let's say that that's true. But somebody like Doug here, he had a stable family, therefore no mental health issues. The fuck does he think mental health issues come from? You can have mental health issues and come from a loving, stable family. That good lord, not all of your mental health issues are going to come from trauma directed at you by your immediate family and relatives.
Anxious or depressed. I mean, how in the world am I going to fully relate to the oppressed when I've had such a great life? Like, can you blame me for not being able to relate? No, you can't blame me. And I can't blame someone for having this, I'll call it a knee-jerk reaction in support of
Won't be me, jail, because I'm too woke, right? I'll be, if I see you descend into this level of madness, I'll be too busy crying into my granola to be able to take steps. I won't even be able to hold you accountable for your opinions. I'll just be like, look what jail circumstances. It was Oklahoma. Oklahoma made him more monster than man. Sorry. Yeah. I shouldn't pick on Oklahoma that way. 830 writes, so I want to get this right. People who are woke are either women or the emotionally or mentally unwell, and we all know that sort of means women are either of those. Do I understand that correctly? Yeah, I think that's kind of where he's going with that. Yep.
the oppressed because they themselves have been oppressed. That's just science. That just makes sense. But understand yourself.
Andrew, so he's saying being a privileged white male makes him immune to empathy. A privileged white male Mennonite made him immune to empathy and to mental health issues. He doesn't have to worry about it. It was probably like the raw milk or whatever he had as a kid. I don't know if Mennonites do that, but you know what I mean. It was those early mornings and working on the farm and stuff like that. That gave him a solid work ethic. And it probably did in some ways. But this kind of what's he doing with this? This is sort of like somebody trying to piece together big sweeping psychological trends from their position on the milking stool. You know what I mean? I mean, this, like, if you wanted to know more about this, rather than kind of blindly, I mean, I'm not a psychology expert, but I'd like to think, given what I've heard just in this video, but in other videos I've heard, that I'm a little bit better grounded in some psychology basics than Doug is, just because of the sweeping generalities that he's making. And it's not that I think that he's basically a sexist, but so many of his ideas are so bad that they're just inadvertently sexist, right? And I guess what I'm going to do as a woke person is just blame this on his upbringing. I mean, he can't be held accountable for this. This was Canada. Canada did this to him, his Canadian Mennonite upbringing. And maybe he was traumatized by the way the Canadians, persecuted those Mennonites back in the day, and he's brought that with him here. And it's been eaten away at him, and now he knows never let your guard down. Canada's just up there.
In fact, if I was a betting man, and I am, I would bet that Mr. Deity has something in his past that helps him relate to the oppressed. I'm not going to guess what that is. But this is why he has this, I think, natural tendency to push back hard against guys like me, like the tough love type of personality type. The difference between, I think, a lot of woke people and myself is,
Did he say that? Did he say that Brian, Mister Deity, was pushing back hard on him? This isn't hard. What Mister Deity is just kind of playing around with the video a little bit. This isn't hard pushback. 830 writes, awesome. Well, as someone who was abused and suffers from anxiety and depression, I must be ultra woke, the end boss of wokeness. Take me on at your own risk. Oh, that's very dark, 830. But yeah, I mean, the idea of trying to say like, different people will have mental health struggles, and it can be independent of their upbringing. This idea that, oh well, you know what? Hey, I know that some of these atheists keep talking about their stories, and when I hear about them, they say they have mental health issues, and I'm just like, and Doug's got the cure for that. Like, you should have been raised by parents who loved you. Then you would have turned out just fine. No mental health issues at all. Like, uh, yep.
I can say this out loud. I can say we need people like Mr. Deity and the very compassionate, sensitive types. We need those types of people in society.
Hang on now. We don't know that Mr. Deity is a super compassionate person. We know that he's being sarcastic about your take on wokeism being like an overabundance of empathy and compassion. It doesn't follow that Mr. Deity himself is somebody that overextends himself and over empathizes, as Doug would call it, with these people. Where's he getting that from? Is he just assuming that because he does know that like enough about what he feels is enough about Mr. Deity's politics? Mr. Deity doesn't like Donald Trump. Probably reliably votes for Democrats. Oh, he must care too much. I mean, come on now. That doesn't follow. That's not logical, Doug.
But it's much harder for the woke people to say that about me. We need guys like Doug, because sometimes we need the tough love. We need sometimes those borders closed. And we need some people who can actually stomach and let people die at times in order for the greater good. Oh, that's a tough pill to swallow.
Is it? I don't know. I didn't think that was very meaningful. Live a math. I have watched many of Mr. Deity. This is low level, easy mode, entry level job, non paid internship push. Yeah, it is. Yeah, this is nothing for him, right? This is easy. Like the idea, like, well, he's got to push back on me hard here because this is part of like, no, this isn't hard pushback. Maybe Mr. Deity's part 2 video will be.
Doug, turn off Fox for a while. See, Stinky 97,000. I find these comments hilarious because people assume so much about me, which is not true. I don't watch Fox News. Or when I do, it's probably just as much as any progressive liberal does. Like,
yeah, this just comes naturally to Doug. He doesn't need it to be beamed into his head. He doesn't need any encouragement. Michael Deaton said, sorry, Doug, we do not need people willing to sacrifice the weak for the strong to live. That's literally his argument there. Yeah, it's pretty close. That's what the Nazis argue. I mean, it's definitely what a lot of fascists argue. It's not a great, like, oh, don't you know that there's somebody has to be there to let you know, hey, some people have to just die. It's interesting. Where was that calculation when he was talking about the kids that might get an owie from a vaccine? Like, we don't need to do that. They'll be better off just getting sick. Like, okay. I mean, I'm getting back into that topic, but you know,
Like, I don't know, once in a blue moon type of thing to see what's going on. Yeah.
For that empathy is because they think they've been oppressed too. So they can supposedly relate. Yeah, right. Hello, ladies, you're 51% of the population. How could you possibly be oppressed, especially in America, which is all about equality and justice? Please, come on.
See, he's actually agreeing with me that women can actually be more empathetic because they themselves have been oppressed. There is
no, I don't think that's what he's trying to do. If you remove the sarcasm and flip that around, I don't think that's what he's saying.
absolutely nothing Mr. Deity has said here so far where he's disagreed with my definition of woke.
Yeah, but he's just kind of playing off it, like, oh, okay, so you think that's because people feel too. Oh, yeah, there's no reason to ever feel sorry for everybody. Like, what about this makes Doug thinks that this is Mr. Deity agreeing with his definition of woke or any of the components to it? He's just playing off his points and then exaggerating them. Oh yeah, there's no reason to feel sorry any groups in this country. I roll. Right? This is an easy way to be sarcastic about the kind of stance that Doug took. But this does not necessarily reflect the actual nuanced views that Mr. Deity may actually have. So the fact that he keeps saying, like, well, he's not really disagreeing with he's not disagreeing with my narrative. All he's done is taken your narrative and then gotten sarcastic with it. It doesn't necessarily mean that he's acknowledging that you've made good points with those. He's illustrating them for effect and then ribbing them.
And what's there to be unhappy, sad, or miserable about? You're living in the greatest country in human history, a country which has been living up to the true meaning of its creed for a quarter millennia, which means everyone has had an equal shot at life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness for all 247 years.
Yeah, and for those autistic people in the crowd, he's using sarcasm here. We all know that some people are born with disabilities, low IQs. Well, some people disagree with that, but we'll just say disadvantages. Yeah, I'm not disagreeing with that. Some people are born with disadvantages. That's just science.
It doesn't matter if you're poor or you have been kept poor for hundreds of years even. You can pull yourself up without the rest of us having to do anything.
And another reason why I think Mr. Deity will never come on and talk to me, because I will get him to admit that some people have been born poor and disadvantaged and have pulled themselves up. They have done it.
How?
That's a real thorn in this. This is like the Apostle Paul, a thorn in their side.
This is always the great illustration. Watch what he does here.
How do you explain those people that have everything against them? Now, I've talked to people, woke liberals about this, progressives, I should call them, not liberal. And what they'll end up saying is, it's luck. It's just luck. Okay, you can say it's luck, but I mean, you tell that to the people who have come out of nothing, that the only reason why you're financially independent today or you're successful in any sort of way today is because of luck. It's not hard work, discipline. Like, these are bad words almost for some woke people. I don't think Mr. Deity would admit that, but for some people, like, hard work and discipline and being able to pull yourself up to have some type of self-control, oh, these are bad words.
Well, it depends. So, apparently Doug has never heard a country music song where you work real hard and don't get ahead, or, you hardly make any money. The only thing that, you spent your entire day giving to the man, and then at the end of the day, you're actually poor. And now your truck needs repairing, but you got your woman and your beer, but she left, took the dog, took the beer. So now you're drinking scope and gutting it just to numb the pain. Sorry, this bit's getting dark. The This is so agonizingly ignorant here. Most people are not going to credit a person's good fortune simply with luck. I don't know many liberals would or many leftists would. But the one major component that is discredited, there are two main things. What do you? I'll ask this to the audience too. What do you think the two main components of a person's success are most frequently discounted by conservatives? I'll give you the number one. It's the one he just discussed. Good fortune, good old fashioned luck, being in the right place at the right time, and landing an opportunity, right? It had nothing to do with you. You were just fortunate enough to be there when it happened or know the right people, whatever. You got it. That's the first one. They'll be, no, 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 I did it on my own. Yeah, you didn't make every opportunity and then successfully take advantage of every opportunity and then have all of those opportunities turn out to be successful. That's not how things work. You can work really hard and lose. Listen to a country music song. Hell, go listen to some rap albums. The rappers talk about the same thing. Pop artists talk about the same thing. There are movies dedicated to this, to people that can't get ahead, no matter how hard they work. And the people that do get an advantage or do take advantage of something, a lot of it is good fortune, luck. They were in the right. Now they took advantage of it and they seized on the right opportunity at the right time. Credit to them. They made the right call and they got it. But guess what else that leads to? The second thing that conservatives usually discount: help. They had luck and they had help, which means they had other people. And conservatives love stories about somebody who's poor. Look, Doug just mentioned it. Somebody who was poor and had everything going against them, and they pulled themselves up. They made something of themselves. Did they do that in a vacuum? No. You can't do that in a capitalist economy. You cannot. I would argue you really can't do that in any economy unless you control the entire economy from the top down. But then again, you probably didn't start off at the bottom. This is just nonsense. This is more this Doug has really internalized a lot of conservative BS about success and hard work. This is the kind of stuff, and this would be one of those kinds of things too. They're like, well, the differences between conservatives. What are some principles that conservatives have that you admire? Do you like the fact that we're about hard work? Well, yeah, but I know a lot of left wingers and liberals that are all about hard work too. That's not unique to you conservatives. Well, okay. What about how we prioritize love for our families and love for our communities? Yeah, I know a lot of liberals and leftists who love those things too. They prioritize those things. Those are a big deal for them. Well, but maybe not the same. Do they love their country? Yeah, they love their country. Well, do they burn the flag? Well, yeah, they do. They protest things they disagree with because they love their country so much that they want to stand up and make change. Well, that's not. See, the biggest thing that conservative ideology usually wants to do is try to make something exclusive to them that's usually kind of normal for other people. Like, well, we love our families. Most people do. We care about the future. Most people do. Most conservatives actually don't. They say they care about the future. What they care about is preserving their identity and their tradition over actual threats that are coming towards them. But that's a different story. We care about we care about our communities. Most leftists and most of the stuff they claim is special to them isn't. They're just co-opting it, saying this is unique to us because we value the things that are normal and human and humane and American and blah 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 blah. And you guys are a bunch of freaks that read theory and care about these highfalutin ideas and stuff and want to change things and mess stuff up and mostly maybe raise my taxes, which I don't like because F all y'all. I got mine, you get yours. I pulled the ladder up behind me. Y'all, that's where things start to usually spiral out of control. And if you push them far enough, you will usually run into the conservative that basically says, I'm not paying a dime for another person. And PineCreek Doug definitely reminds me of the kind of person who does not want to be taxed a dime to help another person out because he needs to believe that you can just make it happen. Be there on time, show some initiative, your work will improve, and you'll be middle class in a matter of no time. Just give it a little grit. Tell that to the people that have been grinding out a job, often more than one job, for 20 to 30 years and have not made a move. They have not gotten anywhere. Come back after you've talked to that person and then tell me how sorry you feel for them, I guess.
Because it makes other people who don't work hard, who don't have self-control, it makes them feel even worse because they couldn't do it.
Because it was just about self-control and grit and building yourself up. This is a lot of simplistic nonsense.
or didn't do it.
to rectify the imagined past wrongs of your alleged victimization. Is that not a cause for unshakable happiness and celebration? Come on.
See, he's agreeing with me. He's agreeing that if you're a woke person, aware of the injustices of the world, the oppression of the world, how can you be happy? Right? So far, there's absolutely nothing he's disagreed with.
Give me a break.
I feel like I should talk about that more, but I'm getting tired. Let's just move on.
Tend to, he's using sarcasm, but he's agreeing. Because of this feel sorry forism, they tend to not look at the facts objectively.
Another great point from Doug here. For example, all right, black people in America have 10% of the wealth white people have. In an otherwise...
Okay. I love this. Black people have 10% of the wealth that white people have. As if black is a monolith. Just
Brace yourselves, folks. He's going to be talking about race, so this is probably going to get me demonetized. I wonder if this got him demonetized. Here we go.
like as white as a monolith. What he actually means is African Americans who have a history of slavery. That's what he really means. And I think a lot of black people in the United States.
I don't know if he knows this, but as far as like white racists are concerned, if they're black here, it doesn't really matter if they had ancestors that were enslaved. So now I'm going to ask this again because I'm getting kind of curious. I don't know if Doug knows anybody. Has Doug ever had conversations with racists? I'm not patting myself on the back here, but I have. And this distinction is unimportant to them if they're talking about black Americans. But let's see where he goes.
Hate it when progressive liberals, sorry, I got to stop saying liberals because I offend other people. I don't want to offend anyone. But I think
you're only defending the leftists you rope in with the liberals, Doug, but we forgive you. Well, but we'll never forget.
A lot of black people in the United States get offended when they're lumped all together. Like you tell a, I don't know, second generation Nigerian who is a doctor, they don't view themselves as the same type of black as an African American black. I know this is hard for some of you to hear, but it's the truth. Even Caribbean blacks don't consider themselves African Americans. People from even Canadian blacks don't consider themselves African Americans because, well, of course, they're Canadian. Most of this conversation about wokeness and feel sorry for them is for a certain group of black people called African American, which make up probably, I don't know, 75, 80% of black people in the United States.
Everybody following this so far? This is good stuff.
Is equal society. That's a fact. So why do you think that is?
There is the question of the century. Okay, so we have people who have less wealth than other people of different skin shades. Why do you think that is?
Doug's about to explain how this works.
Now, this is where, believe it or not, I don't think Mr. Deity and I would disagree fundamentally, but we would
I'm willing to guess that you will
disagree in degree. So if you had a bar chart, like bar charts. So
I don't know what those are. I'm not good at math because I'm a liberal.
At the top is 100%, the bottom 0. Why do African Americans have less wealth in the United States on average than, let's say, Asians or white people? A woke person, under my definition, would say systemic racism is like very close to 100% of the reason. A guy like me says, well, hang on a second. What do you base that on? What's your data?
Why would anyone say that? Okay, in the sense that you're talking about large trends, yeah, well before 75 to 80%, you mean like the ones who literally were not allowed to develop generational wealth until like 30 years ago? Doug doesn't get that. That's part of history and stuff that I think he just like glances over. Remember, Doug has stated he doesn't read, so he doesn't know. If you're talking about this kind of generational wealth, or not generational wealth, but this wealth disparity, and you're talking about systemic racism in the sense that this might explain why a group of people that represent about anywhere from 14 to 16% of the population will have 10% of the wealth. And why is that? And so he'll be like, okay, well, I know what it is. And they'll say like, well, maybe 100% of it is systemic racism. if we're talking about something structural that explains what that average is, that's probably a good place to start. Yeah. It, can you maybe suspect where he's going to go with this? We're talking about we're talking about averaging it out for the entire group of people and why they possess so little wealth, and they're underrepresented in that wealth. Um, where is he going to go with this? I bet he's going to blame it on individuals.
Could it be that maybe it's 55% the reason?
That they all have problems, or that the whole group has no, like, this is a weird, this whole thing is this is, you would not even do this. Systemic racism would be part of the backdrop of circumstances that make it harder for certain for a group to get ahead or earn more or whatever, right? Just like capitalism in general will keep the working class poor, generationally speaking. It's very hard to excel past that point, especially if you end up in an economy where you start seeing people inheriting jobs. Then you know that you're really on a bad track. You don't have a lot of upward mobility. You have decreased upward mobility. You're going to see that. So, to what extent are people not being able to move up in terms of develop that wealth? There's a system in place that is kind of making sure that whether it's intentional or unintentional, it's keeping that there's an inertia built into that is producing that effect across the average, across the group. You wouldn't try to say, well, the reason that white people, he's going to try to do like a weird bell curve thing on this. The reason that white people stay poor, if they're poor, it's 100% their fault. But if black people, if the systemic, now Doug will be like, I'm a reasonable person. I think that systemic racism might exist and that might have something to do with it. But it attributes it accounts for 25% of why some of these people just have a harder time getting ahead and getting wealthy. That doesn't make any, like, you wouldn't talk about it in that sense. That's not what we're talking about. You're not trying to use that as a way to try to figure out a percentage of, to what extent did a person's engagement with capitalism affect their ability to pull themselves up by their bootstraps or fail miserably and just collapse into total destitution? To what extent did this black person have to suffer from systemic racism? What percentage of that had a negative drawdown against their capacity to rise above and move on to bigger and better jobs and make more income? Like, I don't know how you would possibly do that. The issue is you have these systemic things dragging down an entire group of people. They're identifiable, and they're relatively easy to identify. They're things like redlining, which he claims doesn't exist anymore, but I just found proof that it did. Things like that have a real effect on people, and those are things outside of their control. Though they're going as a citizen to a bank to get a loan, to get a house, to build wealth that way, do whatever, and the lending's not happening. They're being discriminated against based on their skin color or their cultural background, where they came from, what neighborhood they currently live in, whatever. They're being redlined. They're being discriminated against. To what extent did that hold them back? Let's assign a percentage to it, and let's not make it 100% because that's too radical, because Doug is uncomfortable with saying circumstances can have that much weight against it. He needs to be able to carve out enough room to blame that person for getting something wrong for some fucking reason. Makes no damn sense, other than he needs to be able to say, you did something wrong. You screwed up. I mean, sure, the deck was stacked against you. Sure, the odds were against you. I get that. But you could have done this right, and then you could have done this. Like, he's just gonna backseat drive the whole thing, like retroactively Monday morning quarterback the whole thing for the person. You could have done this, and then you could have done this, and then you could have done this. Yeah, that person couldn't have done the like, it's easy for you to say now. To what percentage did this weigh on an individual? What the hell are you talking about? Absolutely bonkers. This is not what people mean when they talk about systemic racism. What percentage is it? Jesus.
And maybe the other parts are other explanations, like culture. See, these questions get to the root of the issue.
No, they don't. they distract from it, because if someone is going out and making a structural criticism, I've complained about this with Nate the lawyer's takes on this kind of stuff, of trying to say, hey, if somebody has a structural criticism about an institution or a policy that's racist, and I can identify a person of color who actually is in support of that particular policy, then I can then claim that that person who's critical of the thing and has accused it of being racist is by extension accusing the individual of being racist, which is completely illogical. In this situation, he's kind of doing the same thing. What I need to make sure that you understand is it can't all be the fault of structural problems. It can't all be the banks. It can't all be capitalism. It can't all be the political system. It can't all be that. It's not all systemic racism. I want to make sure that we leave room to denigrate these people based on culture. That's what he just said. I mean, he didn't say it, put it that exactly that way, but that's what he wants. Well, to what extent is their culture affecting them? What about their culture is hurting them? Is what I would like to know. Whose culture, first of all, and what about it is holding them back relative to identified structural issues that are affecting their community in general? Before we get into individual examples.
And these are questions that the average woke progressive hasn't even thought about. Or they're
Right. I just said all that because I've never thought about it. Congrats, Doug.
unwilling to even entertain the idea that what explains a outcome might not be what you think it is. Now
Sure. Is Doug willing to explain that, like, there could be circumstances where a person has completely failed in life due to no fault of their own? I don't know how likely it is, but to no fault of their own, their life has just gone to shit. They worked their asses off. They always had a job. They always made sure they were getting a check. They never asked for help. They never asked for a handout. And life kicked them between the legs repeatedly until the day they died. So are you willing to accept that that had nothing to do with what they did? It's just circumstances. That some of that had to do with bad luck. To what extent does bad luck play into it? But the first thing he mentioned as a possible contributor, notice that. The other thing wasn't luck. Okay, there's this systemic racism, or there's some kind of structural problem over here. But what about culture? That's just a flag for him to be able to say there's something wrong with them. It's not my fault. It's not the government's fault. It's not the country's fault. There's a little bit something wrong over there. That's what's holding them back. There's something lacking. There's something missing. Really, it's interesting that you went there and you didn't just say it's 80% this structural stuff and then 20% bad luck. That would account, right? That'd do it. But no, Doug needs the narrative that he can blame people for deficiencies. He needs to be able to hang on to that.
sitting here saying that, yes, systemic racism, the past, the history of slavery has set African Americans back, no question. But in the year 2023, when we have, let's say, a 20-year-old African American male who's in poverty, what explains that? Are you seriously going to tell me it's 100% systemic racism? And this is why a lot of progressive woke people will not talk to me, because
I can see why they'd stop talking to you at this point, Doug. This is some repugnant shit. This really is. This is really repugnant. And I'm sorry that this video has gotten a little bit more of a downer, but this is terrible. Like, no. You need to be able to factor in what the ability for somebody like Doug, an immigrant with, I think, 1 year of citizenship under his belt, to sit here and tell people, no. The reason those people aren't, you need to factor into your calculation. You need to drive down this idea that the system's doing it to them or racism is doing it to them, and you need to up the factor that there's something wrong with them. People don't need that encouraged in them. People do that automatically. People do that a little too often. People tend to gravitate towards blaming the person instead of thinking about it. It takes reflection and thought and study and listening, patience and analysis to take into account circumstances surrounding a person's success and failure, even success, not just failure, but also success. And he's just like, "Oh no, no, you need to understand that we need to be able to keep these other positions open just in case we need to denigrate people for lacking in some other way." Yeah, maybe like I'm waiting for him to just come like, "Okay, well, there's systemic racism. Maybe there's a point to it, though. Did you ever wonder about that? Have you ever read this book called The Bell Curve?" I'm waiting for him to like pull out his signed copy of the thing.
I will get them to admit, well, okay, Doug, I agree with you. Maybe it's 5%. They got
I wouldn't admit to that because that's an irrational question to ask. That has nothing to do with it. To what extent is a person's stuff, their lack of success, have to do with this? Or even as the group goes, like to what extent is it this? Like you would just need to know exhaustively every component for every individual in that group, positive and negative, and then be able to reflect that. And you really couldn't. And that's not the point. The point isn't to the degree to which systemic racism holds people back. It's what the hell is it doing there in the first place? That's the question that you're supposed to be asking.
crappy parents or no dad in the home.
By the way, thank you, James S, for your comment. Or James F, excuse me. I appreciate that.
5%. I'll give you 5%, Doug. Whereas another African American family did have a father in the home, and they're doing much better. Okay, Doug, I'll give you that.
Why would I give you that? What about the ones where they? What about the ones where they have a dad in the home but they're not married? It's not a husband kind of thing, right? Or the dad's not in the home but the dad still support. Like he's one of those. He's one of these guys that the absent black. This is a myth, man. Doug, you need to read more. The absentee black father thing is a conservative, racist myth. Look it up. Well, it's not going to do me any good to tell you to look it up. I'll just tell you to trust me. I'm a granola eating lib and I've done the research on this, right? And by research, I mean I've looked it up a couple of times and read synopsis of other books and research on the topic. This is a myth. The data do not reflect this. It didn't really reflect it when it first became a trope. It's a completely outdated notion now.
But even that is a tough admission for some people because
It is because it's not based on facts. If you're just trying to say, oh well, these kids didn't have their dad in the home and these kids did. Like no, 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 no. If you need to go and find plenty of examples of people who are still struggling despite the fact they have two parents in the home, I can find that out for you. It's real easy. There are a lot of people that are struggling. I don't even you don't even have to pick a particular race of people in this country. You just have to know what neighborhoods to go to. A lot of people are suffering and struggling. It is very hard to make ends meet. It has been for a long time. This crap that he's talking, well, hey, you know what? I managed to do this and do that and yeah, okay. You got yourself into a good position. You took advantage of some things. Not everybody gets those chances. And sometimes when they get those chances, they're not able to take advantage of them or they take advantage of the wrong ones and they don't pan out. There's lots of variables that go into this kind of thing. And he's just trying to just struggling like, I just want you liberals to admit that it's not all systemic racism. It doesn't all have to be systemic racism. Nobody said that. The question is, what's it doing there? Why are these people being hamstrung to any degree by this shit? It's irrational horse shit and nonsense. Why is redlining still going on? Because people are irrational boobs. That equals bankers. Bankers are irrational boobs.
it just makes some people feel bad. And we can't have that. It's much easier to blame others than, let's say, parents.
Which is blaming others. What the fuck? It's much easier to blame others than to blame parents. Okay. You still want to blame. So the issue isn't blaming others. The issue is blaming the right people responsible. Okay. The problem wasn't the system or racism or systemic problems or any kind of cultural inertia or anything built into. No, 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 no. Your mom and dad suck. So sorry, kid. Them's the breaks.
But to say that all the injustices, all the wealth disparity is 100% systemic racism, you sound like an extremist, radical, crazy person.
Okay, if they sound like an extremist, radical, crazy person, The flip side to this argument seems to be from Doug that he's willing to excuse it up to a certain percentage, because he did say that they only disagreed on this to a, to a question of degrees. So, what percentage of systemic racism is acceptable in Doug's mind?
You do. I don't say it's 0%, and you shouldn't say it's 100. And if you start talking about history and how it affects
Okay, so now he's saying that it does contribute to a degree. Okay, to what degree is that allowable or permissible or acceptable, tolerable?
people,
Especially when we're talking about something like fucking racism. We're not talking about somebody having to get over the fact that they got dumb parents, or they got into an accident and have an injury now, or they're a little handicapped or something like that, or maybe they did have some kind of mental or intellectual disability or something, but they persevered and they pushed past that and they succeeded. We're talking about BS that they can't control. We're talking about some bigot at the bank.
I mean, you start setting yourself for some very dangerous conversations, like people who've been very oppressed, very persecuted, and as a whole are successful today in certain countries, like the Jews.
Oh,
Hello?
oh my God.
Oh, can't talk about that.
Well, you probably really shouldn't, given where I think you're going to go with it, but let's see.
It's not a tough admission, Doug. Doug can straw man with the best. I'm not straw manning at all here. I am asking a question. What percentage of that bar chart for the 10% wealth disparity of African Americans in the United States, what percent do you attribute that wealth disparity to systemic racism? And I'm making the claim that if you say 99 or 100%, you are delusional.
Okay.
You're a radical extremist who has the inability to think.
Why would it matter one way or the other? This is so bizarre to me. Like, do we have examples of people who, despite systemic racism, have been able to rise up into the upper echelons of the economy and make an inordinate amount of money? Sure. I guess the reason that it's not all bad is because if you exist in Doug's world, making money means everything will be okay. Even if you don't get to drive a Tesla, making a little bit of money is okay. Making even more is even better, obviously. And making lots of money, even better. So if we can find some examples of some individuals that have eclipsed these problems, let's say an Oprah or a Jay-Z or a LeBron James, and that kind of covers it, right? Media, sports, music, also kind of media, but So these are three individuals, all African American. They've all made an enormous amount of money. As members of the African American community, their wealth, when included in the group of all other African Americans, amounts to 10% of the nation's wealth. How much poorer are these poor people in this particular community? They're real poor. The fact that these individuals have been able to find something in this particular economy that makes them an enormous amount of money and gains them this kind of access and power, kind of interesting. To what extent is that a feature or a glitch? You mentioned the Jews. The Jews had an interesting relationship as moneylenders because they would basically lend in situations where other banks would not, and they would engage in things that other aspects of society would deem untoward or unseemly. But because they were very good at this, this is generally an area of business that was left to them because they were kind of an outcast group. And hey, if you're going to do that, let's go to this person to get it done, to take care of this kind of lending. This became an inherited profession that they developed. And not only did they become very proficient at it over time, but they developed an enormous amount of wealth while they did it. The level of cultural resentment and racism directed at them rose, not always completely in proportion, but it rose and fell sort of in line with their success as well. The racist structure that kept them on the outskirts of business and kept them in that thing also secluded them in such a way that it allowed them to take advantage of it in a way that made them a lot of money. But the more successful they got in that pigeonholed little area, the more likely people were to resent them as a group because they managed to make a go of it. They made a success out of it. It's one of the amazing things about dumb prejudice is that you can hate these people for being failures and successes often at the same time. So I don't think that's a good example to use. Like, oh, but Jews are really successful. Why are Jews? How have Jews surpassed this? Because they've made a lot of money, Doug. Is that the thing you're running with? They've made a lot of money, therefore they're successful. No problems here. I guess you can earn your way out of racism. If you're wealthy enough, maybe you can escape it to a certain degree, but then you're just ignoring everybody below that income level that still has to deal with the real consequences, not only of the systemic racism that exists for them because of their race and because they're poor, but also the racism directed at those members of their group that deigned to become successful in their particular fields. Like they don't experience racism at all anymore. I'm sure they do, but they experience it in different ways because they're wealthy in their particular fields. So it's directed at them differently.
Now, if you say 80%, I got a little more respect for you. But if you're basically saying it's all systemic racism and nothing to do with culture or personal responsibility, I view you as a fool.
Yeah, one of us is being really foolish about this. If you're just trying to take in like I said before, the results of this particular group, why do you need to like? What about their culture? Again, I'm curious about this. What about their culture needs to be explored in order to determine why they're coming up short in terms of their share of wealth? Because that's what's really triggered him. That's what's got him in on this. Like, and he does seem kind of triggered on this particular. Oh, I'm going to talk to you guys about this. Oh, okay, teach. Preach. Why are we off base here when it comes to their share of the wealth? I guess it's because there's too many of us woke libs out there that won't give a little bit of a percentage notification, a little bit of attention to the fact that there's a quote unquote cultural element here. What cultural element is he talking about? I wonder. I wonder if it's laziness or drug abuse or some other uh, bad note on the piano that these guys like to play. And by these guys at this point, I'm talking about guys that like the traffic in this kind of bullshit rhetoric. You can figure your way out of this rhetoric with a Wikipedia search. This is old, racist nonsense. Old and tired.
Where, in my definition of woke, where you have so much compassion and feel sorry for them,
no, your definition of woke doesn't matter. It only mattered It only mattered for this video because Mister Deity was making fun of it.
Not willing to even give 5% personal responsibility for, let's say, a culture or a family, whatever. That's what I mean by this feel sorry for them, this hyper giving.
I love it. He's talking about this in a percentage way, like you can completely separate these things cleanly. It was 60% systemic racism. It was 20% illiteracy. It was 10. What the hell?
Excuses. It's never a person's fault. Never, ever, ever.
No one I know is saying that. He's still running with this is just a canard. It's just to mislead. I don't know anyone that's saying this, even amongst certain minority groups. Like this country has a hard time holding individuals in minority communities accountable for their individual shortcomings and crimes. Has he seen the incarceration rate statistics? Our country does not have a problem with that. And the libs, quote unquote libs, who are bleeding heart types, also do not have a problem blaming individuals for their problems.
Never. It can't be, because then we're viewing them as bad people or stupid people, whatever. We can't have that. Well, here's the fact. Some people are stupid. Some cultures are worse than others. This is the hard truth to admit. Some cultures suck. Some cultures are better than others.
Sure, like American culture. American culture sucks, right? I mean, American culture is filled with divisiveness and anger and these terrible ideas of. I mean, there's an enormous amount of science illiteracy and a tendency towards magical thinking about God and angels. And am I right? I mean, it's kind of a crappy culture. And yeah, Dildo Baggins, do you think Doug will advocate for me the next time I get refused a job because of my ethnicity? Well, he'll make sure to. If you give him a rundown of what's going on, I'm sure he'll give you a percentage. He'll give you a bar graph and show you the percentage of what percentage of it is. Maybe that'll be interesting. He'll tell you to what percentage of your shortcomings. How much of it is systemic racism, or maybe you have poor quality bootstraps.
I can mention cultures like in Islam that where women are severely oppressed, not allowed to drive, put bags over the head, and then even for some progressive woke people, they would even tough to admit that is a bad culture. But I can give examples where you'll agree with me. Yeah, some cultures suck,
Which one? Yeah,
and we would.
I asked the same. Which cultures, Doug, and how are they worse? Yeah, to what degree are we talking about? How are they worse? And this isn't like one of these postmodern, like, oh, who are we to decide? What are we talking about? Which cultures is he talking about? Are we talking about like real big cultural differences, like the kind of general difference between Americans and say the French? Because that's a massive, that's painting with a massive brush. There are a lot of cultures just within this country, just out of Americans. There's right wing, there's left wing, and even in them, you have to parse those out. And that's just talking about cultural differences on a political level. We're not even talking about localized differences, localized cultures, religious tendencies and trends. No, I just want to be able to say that some cultures they're definitely worse than others. In what sense are we talking about, and in what way are you excluding them? Oh, you know what? It's not the fact that you have a skin color that we object to. It's that your culture sucks. That's why I've decided not to rent to you, or not to give you a loan, or not let you have the job, or not let you go to school here. It's not because of how you look. It's because you are a member of a culture that I think is objectionable. And therefore, and hey, you know what? That's just an objective fact. Sorry, them's the breaks. Off you go. Is that gonna work? Are you just gonna be able to leave it at that? I don't think so. I don't think Doug thinks so either. I think at this point he's probably just tired.
Be agreed. But can't talk about African American culture in the United States. Some of them, no, it's all systemic racism. Even the reason why fathers are not in the home and they have sex. I mean, even their coitus is determined by the white man.
What are you talking about? Who is saying that? And what is the point of this? This is really like mask off, Doug. Here now, I mean, last time it was mask off about the masks and the vaccines. Now it's just him channeling some real Archie Bunker shit about Americans. Because let's keep this in check here. He's not talking about when he's talking about cultures. He's not talking about Americans versus like you know um, Kenya or Japan, China or Germany. He's talking about cultures here. He's talking about populations in this country. And when he's talking about stuff like that, like, oh, you're just gonna say there's some kind of systemic reason why these people are being so promiscuous, having kids out of wedlock and stuff. What? This is respectability politics being channeled by an aging Gen Xer who's white. You could get the same fucking crap from Bill Cosby. And the only reason Bill Cosby was able to get away with it was because he made a show of he was entertaining as a comedian, and he made a show of being good with kids, with some of his little specials and things like that. And he wore sweaters and shit. And most importantly, because he was black. So a lot of white audiences were like, well, here's a guy who's telling young people who are black to pull up their pants and get a job and don't make mistakes. It's respectability. Like, you do this and you'll get ahead and there's nothing to worry about. That's that's a complete distraction from the issue that you need to deal with. It's not about them. They can comb their hair, they can change their diction, they can do all these kinds of things. It does not necessarily change the real structural problems that you have in the country, the ones you really need to deal with. And it's not up to them to somehow straighten up and fly right enough to get to move that ahead. when you just have all that the bigot does, all they have to do is shift the goalpost. And racists are really good at that because nothing that is done by that group is ever going to be enough. And Doug is actually kind of demonstrating this. He's demonstrating this a little bit like, well, you know what? Okay, maybe some of it's systemic racism, but what if we're dealing with somebody who has too much sex, who has too many out of wedlock kids? I don't know. What do we do with them? To what like how many white boys do this stuff? This is just unbelievably ignorant.
Really, you're going to go there?
He didn't get accepted by America. He got released by Canada.
You're not even going to give 10% personal responsibility for coitus outside of marriage?
I'm sure people would blame that guy for having sex, unprotected sex. I don't think people have a problem going after deadbeat dads. Again, this is one of those things where do Americans have a problem blaming individuals? No, usually the opposite is true. Condemning people is sort of our jam.
Really?
America
Well, at least he's laughing again now. He's lightened up. He got the racism out of his system. Now he's back.
is and has always been a meritocracy, a country that rewards hard work, resilience, and good old-fashioned Yankee Doodle gumption, right? So
Right.
whatever your
Look at immigrants to this country who come in legally, who are black.
I got to tell you, almost all the ones that come in, the ones that come in from the south of the border, they come in and maybe they enter illegally, but they're usually here legally because they usually get stopped and they get prosecuted with a misdemeanor. They do that because they're appealing for amnesty. They're requesting, not well, they're amnesty here in the country, and when they do that, asylum, I should say, they're requesting asylum. When they do that, they get a court date, and after that court date is set, they are then here legally. And most of them, unfortunately, don't get approved to stay. The others that do stay here legally, work. So this is always one of those kinds of things like, oh, did they came here legally? Came here legally how, Doug? There are people that are here legally that technically entered illegally because it was easier for them because of the way relations are between our country and say, Mexico or the Central American countries below. It's easier for those people to come here and get arrested and get charged with a misdemeanor and then use that arrest to ask for asylum, which is what most of them do. It's not an easy process. The vast majority of them don't get approved. But when they're here, I guess the first thing they do is they apply for Social Security and Medicaid and then just live off the state, right? Oh, wait, no, they can't. They don't get to do that.
Indian, Nigerian. And the stupid Americans are not smart enough to, distinguish between that black person and black person, according to many progressives. So, systemic racism affects all black people, all people of color. But yet, how do they succeed? How do they succeed? How do the Nigerians succeed? How do the East Indians succeed in this country? Well, Doug, it's because they come from wealthy families. How did they get wealthy in the first place?
See what I mean? This is just getting dumber.
Huh?
Oh, okay. So here's the thing. Most of those people that are toiling in poverty are keeping their heads just barely above water. If they're still surviving, they're succeeding despite their circumstances, right? If they're working hard and keeping some food in, now they probably have a lot going against them, but I would still say that those people are successful because of their circumstances, because of the amount of poverty and the things going directed against them. The idea that a group of immigrants come over and they are darker skinned, well, they're not going to get treated the same way because, well, maybe they will because racists are stupid and they just won't be able to identify. You're right. Racists are stupid. They won't identify. They won't really make the distinction between somebody who's from Africa versus somebody who's African American, descended from slaves. Racists don't really feel they need to make the distinction. They're usually just going to be really particular about, the look of the people that are around them. Racists are stupid that way. This idea that I'm pretty sure Doug believes that there's an opposite racism going on here with the libs, because the libs just don't make a distinction either, right? They're just going to pity all of them. It's their pity, like, oh, their pity goes out to the wealthy Nigerian guy who comes over and wants to establish a business or do something here too. No, don't think that's the case. I really don't. And if they're able to come here and they have the money to set up a business and they're doing it legally, great, good for them. Does that mean they're never going to experience racism in this country? No. Sadly, no. It probably will happen because, like he said, Americans can be dumb about this, and American racists are real dumb, and they're not going to be charitable and make a distinct. Oh, I'm sorry, you're Nigerian. Oh, we're sorry.
This is another difference between, I think, progressive woke people and people like myself, is they have in this idea that if you're a millionaire or a billionaire, there's only one explanation. It's just you're cheating.
Excellent point, Maya. How do they succeed? Like all Americans, Black Americans generally stay within the socioeconomic status in which they were born. Doug would know this with some Wikipedia searches if he understood, like, some anthropology, sociology. Get woke, Doug. Come on. Yeah. It's not so much that they're falling behind, it's just everybody's kind of stuck where they are. And African Americans in this country are stuck at a lower rate because they had systemic structural things that held them back. Like Wilberforce had mentioned, that the inability for them to build generational wealth. Now, some of these immigrants that he's talking about, like the guys from Nigeria or something like that, if they were coming over and somebody's like, "Oh yeah, they had something going for them, they had resources and stuff from their families," like, well, how did they make their money? Well, it's obvious they might be coming from a country where they did have the ability to build some generational wealth. It's not to discount that they had any, they didn't have problems and they didn't have struggles. But if they came over here and did that, good for them. But those are different circumstances. The socioeconomic circumstances of most Americans, as Maya put it, is that most people just end up kind of stuck in the same class. And more people, I think, are getting attuned to the fact that more and more of this is about class than it is about race. I don't think I've ever heard Doug talk about class, which tells me that he's the kind of conservative that is preoccupied with race questions, more so than the straw man liberals that he's fighting against in his imagination.
You're conniving. Did you realize that most of the millionaires in this country, their parents weren't millionaires?
So,
That they actually achieved, and they did use things like hard work, smart work. There's a difference between hard work and smart work. But
right,
usually, if you can do hard work and smart work both, you're going to be successful in this country.
maybe there's a chance, and if it's smart work and hard work, you probably are increasing your chances. Those are chances. He's talking about this like it's a guarantee. This is magical thinking. This is the kind of country where if you think this, do this, combine these four things together, it's going to work out for you. No, it's not. This is America. There's no guarantees. There are no guarantees. That's the nature of this beast. If you don't understand that and you pretend that you are a capitalist, pro business, and savvy, you are not paying attention to the America that you live in. He's making it sound like, well, if you just follow these rules, America will just give itself over to you and you'll be good to go. No, you can do all those things, and America, taken as a whole, whatever your experience with it is, can hand you your ass on a daily level, a daily basis.
You have to actually be pretty stupid in this country to not have a middle class income. There's another hard truth.
Then how does that account for stagnating wages across most of the middle class, Doug?
You can be a teller at a grocery store.
Oh, this is good. I can't wait to play this one. Most millionaires came from very well-off parents. I think that's true too, and most of that wealth generally is generational in some way. The idea that it's very, very difficult for somebody to go from, say, being with parents who only made $50,000-$60,000 a year combined, and you launching yourself into something really, really, into like a super millionaire status, unless you're talking about somebody who's just an unmitigated genius at, say, technology, ends up developing something or becomes some kind of tech type, and really just jumps way outside the norm. Those people are called outliers for a reason. And I guess Doug's just said, well, all you need to do is just be a super genius, and yeah, you can get really wealthy. But now he's going to tell you what the trick is here. You can be a teller
So
at
if
a
you play your
store.
cards right, save your money, within 20 years, you're a middle class lifestyle.
Does anyone believe that? If you're a teller and you save your money, in 20 years you're going to have a middle class lifestyle.
Show up to work on time. Be
Okay.
nice to your bosses and employees. Be conscientious.
Employees? You mean coworkers? It sounds like this person's already gotten upgraded.
Have some type of initiative and drive.
Only some type, not actual
You're going to
initiatives.
have a middle class income.
Not necessarily. I know plenty of people who work their asses off and show lots of initiative and drive in certain communities with certain jobs, and they're not going to get the opportunities are not going to happen for them. It's not going to happen where they are, and it's not going to happen for them in time. They're too old.
And most importantly, don't have kids you can't afford.
Okay, yeah. So as long as you never make a mistake, never have a kid, don't have any kids that you can't afford. I don't know about anybody. I'm not a parent myself. I would be terrified of being a parent because of how much they cost. But ask anybody here who's got kids in the live chat, how much do they cost? Are they affordable? I got a lot of coworkers that basically spend the equivalent of a second mortgage. They both, both parents work, but they're paying out the equivalent of a second mortgage payment for part-time daycare, not full-time, part-time daycare. And the reason they're getting part-time daycare is because currently, thanks to the pandemic, they're able to work remotely and switch off so that they can be at home working and keep an eye on the kid. That helps save that cost a little bit, but not by much. I think they're still paying probably $850, $900 a month. So how much do kids cost? Yeah, I mean, it's expensive. So just never have any kids. Don't have any kids that you don't have them if you can't afford them. People are getting priced out. The majority of people are getting priced out of being able to have kids, especially if they're quote unquote middle class. If you are middle class, that teller at that bank, and have a kid, you go from middle class to working poor. Just like that.
You're going to have a middle class income. You're going to be okay. Now, you're not going to, be driving Teslas around or whatever, but it's America's such a great country. It's actually pretty hard to screw up.
Yeah.
Situation, you can pull yourself up, even if you don't have bootstraps or they were stolen from you.
Yeah. Some guy named Bob, save up when most Americans can't afford a $200 medical emergency. Sounds realistic. Yeah. The vast majority of middle class people cannot afford a $400 emergency of any kind. They just don't have the savings for it. And many of them don't have the credit for it either. Or if they do have the credit, it's going to tax their credit to a point where it's going to hurt them financially trying to pay the thing off. He's completely out of touch.
So if one group has 10% of the wealth that another group has, is that not a clear indicator that they just haven't worked as hard or made good decisions?
Yeah, he's using sarcasm here. But then, Mr. Deity, if you were to come on, I will ask you that question. What's your bar chart look like?
And that will completely miss the point, and hopefully Mr. Deity will laugh at you for that, because that is nonsense. These you can't really differentiate those things that cleanly. Oh, it was only 20%. Oh, this person was okay because it was only 5% of their quote unquote culture. It was pretty high. 85 to 90% was systemic racism. I mean, they really had a bad go of it. They lived in Minneapolis. Cops there, man. Whew.
You're making it sound like that I'm saying it's 100% their fault that they just haven't worked hard enough.
No, that's not the point.
I'm not saying that. But where we differ is, we agree in principle. Where we differ is in the degree of allocation on that bar chart of how much is personal responsibility, how much is culture, how much is the family you were raised in, and how much of the societal pressures called systemic racism from the past.
And to what degree, what percentage of that societal pressure, quote unquote, that which equals, that's not societal pressure. Societal pressure is being a white guy and feeling compelled to become a single income earner for a family because you were raised a conservative Christian. That's kind of a social pressure, a societal pressure, cultural pressure. We're talking about racism, man. To what percentage is racism holding these people back. I would say any percentage of it is intolerable, given that they have no control over that. That is just a ridiculous stance to take.
That some people are just helpless because of the systemic racism.
No, that's not the point. The argument does not have to be that people are helpless. They're clearly not, but they're stuck. And due to no fault of their own in most situations, they can't work their way out of it. And the people that do get to work their way out of it because they are incredibly lucky and very, very unusually gifted, say somebody like an athlete or somebody who captures the zeitgeist with a rap movement like Jay-Z, or somebody who has the kind of charisma and social intelligence of like an Oprah Winfrey, and they work hard and they make the most of their opportunities and they make a lot of money, and guess what happens? They get held up as examples, and they are used as cudgels against the people that are still being held down. Like, well, I don't understand what you have a problem with. I mean, Oprah's got a lot of money, right? This is the kind of condescending, soft racism that just sort of goes on in conservative, and I would even say independent minded political discourse in this country. Even when an African American person in this country is a success, their success is used against black people. Doug has been guilty of this in the past too, by also using the model minority myth. He's like, well, hey, how do you explain Jews doing okay for themselves or Asian Americans? Huh? That's also a myth. That's being used as a way to say, hey, well, this group crawled their way out of it. Therefore, what? You're supposed to read into that there's no systemic racism. That's the point. And for whatever reason, Doug is trying to play it safe by saying, well, there's systemic racism, but it's not as big a factor holding these people back as you think. And you're not being fair-minded if you're not willing to take into the things that I account towards them holding them back, which most of them, sorry to say, Doug, come from old racist tropes.
They have no agency. That's where we differ, is where we put those percentages.
The percentage of racism that you're willing to excuse, right? I mean, it's inconsequential, really, if you think about it. I bet that Mr. Deity will be right on the same page with you. Like, yeah, you know what? If you factor in a 20 to 30%, forgivability for a certain level of just consistent American structural racism, yeah, I mean, I guess that's, yeah, just factor that in, count that off, and then you know what? Let it fly. If they hit 40 to 50% personal responsibility, they're a loser. I don't care about the structural racism thing. I mean, they just suck. Am I right? That's how we should do it, right? Data driven, on the back of a napkin with just insanity sauce. Like, uh,
Or maybe these people just don't have what it takes. Okay, there. I said it. I did. I said it. Has anyone tested people's IQs and run a comparison? I mean,
there's the bell curve.
a country like America that embraces equality can only do so much if certain groups.
You know what? That is very true. Some people are born with Down syndrome. I had a cousin who had Down syndrome, and I loved him. I mean, he was the happiest kid. He brightened everybody's life.
This really makes me want to play that scene of Matt Dillon in There's Something About Mary.
But in terms of financially, because he was talking about 10% wealth and so forth, Down syndrome people are a financial burden to society. That's just a fact. Some people have lower IQs and will be a burden financially to society. That is a fact.
Then maybe your economics need to change. Here's the thing. If you have somebody in your family who has Down syndrome, if your economy is different, if your financial structure, the way you earn is different, that person is no longer a burden. If you are somebody like Doug, who's committed to the capitalist idea of an economy where, and I'm not going to try to get into too much theory here because this is going to bore the shit out of everybody, but the idea behind this is that the production and distribution of goods and services is essentially centralized in the marketplace. It's the labor relationship and then the production of goods and services for profit. And you can tell that it's a capitalist marketplace because of the amount of dependence on that market. You can't survive without the marketplace. That's where you get your clothing, your food, your shelter, your water. Everything costs, everything needs you. You need to be earning a wage. Otherwise, you'll die. If you're a capitalist and you own property, you need to make sure that that thing is making a profit. Otherwise, you're not going to be a capitalist anymore. You'll lose your capital. You'll become a wage earner, and you need to earn and continue earning to pay for those goods and services. Otherwise, you'll die. In a capitalist economy, he's absolutely right. To a certain extent, a relative with Down syndrome is not going to be the high earner that you could hope for. You didn't give birth. You didn't have a Down syndrome. You got a Down syndrome relative instead of having the guy that becomes the hedge fund manager, or is an unmitigated tech genius and ends up getting the whole family wealthy. And now everybody can buy whatever they want. Change that economy so that the trade and marketplace are not central to production to distribution. Put that off to the side. Let's say that you have a commonwealth where people have land and families who grow their own food. A lot of the basics are supplied. Let's make it a sci-fi kind of situation where you provide them with 3D printers to provide them with basic building materials so that they can build their own homes and repair them on the site. They can make their own clothes. They can grow their own food. All of their basic things are taken care of. They can literally disengage from the marketplace because all their other basic things are taken care of, and anything in surplus they can take to the market and earn a little something extra. Now is your mentally handicapped or developmentally handicapped relative a liability, or are they an asset? In that economy, they're an asset. It depends on how your economy works. So yes, he's absolutely right. If you're just a hawk-faced capitalist, like, nope, I'm telling you this is how it works, that kid right there, that kid is a liability. They're a money sink. They're a money hole. Sure, maybe we should change the economy so that people like that don't get treated that way. They don't get categorized as financial liabilities, first and foremost.
Some people are blessings to society financially. That not only do they make money for themselves, but they pay their taxes and they give to the poor. It lifts other people up.
Charity doesn't do that much, man.
Aren't sending their best, and therefore they start out with some massive deficit. This is not a miracle.
Someone just wrote in the live stream chat, this is like the stupidity of people. He's from Manitoba and doesn't believe in systemic racism. I just said, I think if you rewind the tape 30 minutes ago, that I do believe there was systemic racism. But as of today, in 2023, can you provide me an example? Well, it depends on how you define. Here's the problem. You got to define.
Yeah, because he defined it as redlining, and I showed it. There is redlining. I mean, unfortunately, I didn't show it on screen. You can find it. That bank out of Los Angeles. One great example. Largest settlement.
Systemic racism. If you define systemic racism as basically everything to do with the past and how it influences today and nothing today, then yeah, I can say there was systemic racism. But if you say that systemic racism includes things that happen today, that laws today that are systemically racist, then no, I say no. In fact, the closest examples I've gotten from a guy who's apparently...
Systemic racism is not limited to legislation that's been passed. It's also about business norms, business, societal, and cultural, those societal pressures he was talking about. Those factor into it too.
An expert in systemic racism was certain Jews in New York can't kill chickens for an offering. I mean, there's a law against that. I just like shake my head. Okay, that's your example of systemic racism.
It's America. Okay? Let's see what Doug has to say.
I don't know why I brought that example up. There are health and hygiene rules that would keep. I know what that. I can't remember what that process is. That particular ritual, but it's basically a sin eating kind of thing. You donate your you kind of put your sins into the chicken. There's a twirling process, and then there's a pretty brutal killing of the chicken. They actually have one where all you do is actually pray. You pray your sins into the bread, tear the bread up, and feed it to fish, and then the sin goes into the fish. You don't have to kill them. Somebody else who catches the fish or something else that eats it, it goes off that way. I wish I could remember the name of that Jewish tradition, but the chicken part, yeah, that I think there were laws passed against it, which I think led to the fish innovation.
People who are woke are in a cult. Not all of them, but a lot of them.
Wow, Doug is really bringing the strong here. He used the C word. No, not that C word. The other one, cult. That's just
Okay, what's the definition of cult? Cult is when you're in a tribe, you're in a group where you're being manipulated, controlled in a negative way. Well, some people would say people in the cult would say in a positive way, but where your actions are, if they go along with the group, they're rewarded, and if they go against the group, they're severely punished.
Caparot. Yep, that's right. Yeah, that's what it is. And like I said, you have to look this up, but I'm pretty sure I remember hearing about this from a comedian. There's, I think the traditional one was the chicken, and you do this twirling thing, and it's cruel. I mean, you're basically torturing this bird and then killing it. But then there's the bread one.
Basically, Christianity, Islam are cults, except they're so popular we call them religions. Now,
Yeah, Lucky said, well, that's not a cult. Yeah, that's not a great definition of cult.
in the woke progressive world, if you're the type of person who says, don't associate with PineCreek, I mean, don't even listen to him. He's a homophobe, sexist, racist bigot. And if you say to your friend, well, actually, I find Doug kind of funny sometimes, and he does say some things I agree with, so I'm going to keep listening to him, even though I disagree with most of the things he says. And then if your friend says, I'm not going to talk to you anymore, I'm not going to associate with you, I'm not going to, how can you allow this to happen? How can you support Doug's channel by giving him one view? I mean, okay, I'll still talk to you once in a while, but I really...
This is just in-group, kind of in-group judgment.
You're not that close friend to me anymore because you're willing to tolerate Doug. Now, some people might think I'm strawmanning here.
I do a little bit. I think you're kind of strawmanning a bit here, Doug. Ari Schaefer did a whole bit about it. Yes, thank you. That was the bit that I saw. Thank you, Dustin. Yeah, I think he is kind of strawmanning because he's talking about sort of the in-house kind of what do they call this? I can't remember the term for this, but it's sort of basically like in-group discipline. I mean, the basic definition for a cult would be like a system of some kind of religious or devotion, right? It's directed towards a phenomenon, a thing, a god, maybe even a person, a figure, or a figurehead. Now, Christian groups, I've heard this before, they would define a cult as its veneration and devotion towards a figurehead or group in exchange for something gross or weird, like, sex or food or wealth or something like that. They try to make it transactional. That's not actually the definition of cult. I mean, Christianity is kind of by basic definition a cult. You got a group of people that venerate Jesus. That's their figurehead. That's the focus of their devotion. That's a cult. That's really all you need. This phenomenon that Doug's talking about here is basically just like, okay, you've got an in-group and they have certain values, and then one person says, hey, I enjoy watching the videos and hearing the opinions of this particular person, and their opinions are like, totally opposite from the values of most of the people in that group. They're probably going to raise an objection to it. That's really about it. What he's talking about would be really no different than the kind of like social reinforcement that you would get if, say, that you are a devoutly Christian, and you just converted to Christianity, and you go home to your family, and they are, well, let's just say that they're Hindus. Keep it fancy. They're Hindus, but you've converted to Christianity, and now you have to deal with that. They're going to be like, no, you should come back into the fold. No, Christianity's bad. They're going to do the same thing. This is just a kind of natural kind of pressuring that you get in your social groups. It's not necessarily indicative of a cult.
But there are people I've heard with my own ears say stuff like this. If you associate with Doug, you're part of the problem. Now, if that is not cultish, I don't know what is.
That's not cultish. That's just them kind of drawing a line on this. That's their opinion. And they're entitled to their opinion. This is America. It's one of the things that makes America exceptional and great. Um, I'd like to think my friends wouldn't vote for people with public policies designed to harm me. Distancing from them is self preservation, also a personal choice. Yeah. And I would say, thanks, Maya, for that comment. I would say for you, I would put the emphasis on the personal choice thing. So, okay, so if somebody says that, so what? If somebody out there tells somebody that was watching PineCreek, hey, you know what? If you're having conversations with that guy, I think you're probably part of the problem. I guess it would depend on the nature of the conversations, but if that's their opinion, that's a conversation that person has to have with the person that they're, rebuking. If it's their opinion, they can have it. Obviously, there's nothing. I don't know that there's anything, but it'd be sad if they stop socializing over that. But it could happen. But if you're talking about serious issues like, I mean, people are like, hey, don't talk about religion and politics. Well, religion and politics are really important things. People should talk about them. And sometimes you're going to have disagreements with people over politics and religion that are not going to be surmountable. Those are just the breaks, especially if they're value related.
Other people tell you what you ought to do, who you ought to listen to, who you ought to avoid. Am I wrong? Is that not cultish?
Just that's just devastating. I don't know how one could even imagine coming back from a smackdown like that. It's basically checkmate, right? I mean, name calling is the atomic bomb of the intellect.
Yes, name calling is the atomic bomb of the intellect. Like PineCreek is a homophobic, racist, bigoted, sexist, misogynist.
That's not name calling. That's just categorizing.
Drop the bomb. Boom.
Those aren't names. This is fascinating. Like, no, name calling would be me insulting you for things that's unwarranted. Like, it wouldn't be fair for me to say that Doug is stupid. Doug's not a stupid person. I don't think Doug is as well informed about these issues that he's talking about as he is. So I will make the claim that he's ignorant. I think he is ignorant about these things. That's not name calling. That's my impression. That's my impression of how much he knows about these issues. Because what I'm hearing is a lot of Archie Bunker stuff from somebody that really is a little too young to have internalized all that Archie Bunker stuff.
This is the thing. Most people like me are not affected by name calling, but the progressive left are.
No, they're afraid of being categorized that way. They're afraid of being put into that field over there. Yeah, no, we've got your number. We know that you're a racist. We know that you're a homophobe. We know that you're whatever. It's not about being insulted. They're not trying to avoid being made fun of. If you're left wing, you get made fun of a lot, especially if you talk about left wing or even liberal ideas. If you're liberal, you get made fun of a lot. If you're in social media at all, talking about any of your opinions, political and cultural, religious, you will be insulted. It will happen. That's not something that I think those people are afraid of. They're afraid of being categorized as something that they can't walk out of. For better or worse.
The worst thing you can say to a progressive person is not to say they're in a cult. The worst thing I could say to Mr. Deity is, Mr. Deity, you're hurting poor people.
Why?
Mr. Deity, you think you're helping the oppressed, but because of your unintended consequences, you're actually cruel to the oppressed. Mr. Deity,
I have not actually seen this part. This is actually hilarious. To what extent is Mr. Deity harming the poor and the oppressed with this satirical take on Doug's take on wokeism? I'm not following the plot anymore here. I'm not afraid to admit it either.
you're actually hurting African Americans with your rhetoric and your wokeness. This cuts deep because a lot of woke progressives.
No, it doesn't. If I had a dollar for every time I have been told by a conservative, not only online but to my face, that I'm the racist, I'd probably have enough to buy decent dinner. It's happened quite a bit. I mean, 15, 20 times. That's enough to make a dent. I wouldn't be surprised at all to hear this from somebody like Doug or any other conservative. I've heard it before. If I advocate for better school funding for public schools, just straight up federal injection of cash into public schools, I'm part of the problem. Don't you understand? Weren't you alive when George W. Bush talked about the soft bigotry of low expectations? You're the racist. Racist. I've heard this my entire life. I trafficked in this rhetoric in the 90s and part of the early aughts when I was still a proud conservative and quite angry about being a conservative too, mostly because it generates a lot of heartburn and stress because it's a lot of holding in your own farts, academic, intellectually speaking. Um, it's yeah, no, no. I not only is this not going to cut deep, I'm willing to bet that Mr. Deity has heard this claim before too. He's been called a racist because he is for, maybe he's for affirmative action. Oh, Mr. Deity, such a racist. Maybe he's for reparations. Oh, super racist. Don't you understand what you're going to do to the poor and the oppressed? Just you hand them that money, you might as well just tranquilize them and put them in a hammock for the rest of their lives. It's like giving money to raccoons, they're at the door begging for handouts. No, you'll never get rid of them. But then they tell you that you're the racist using language like that. Yeah, it's fuck awful. So, no, this doesn't cut deep. This is just a really old, tired trope from conservatives.
View themselves as very compassionate and helping the poor, the oppressed. But if you actually tell them your actions is causing harm, like an example is the trans kids. If you support the removing the breasts of a young girl because they say they're trans at the age of 15, and you're so compassionate because you want to support their identity, you're a cruel person. You're a bad person.
Whoa, easy there, Doug. Whoa, easy there. I mean, look in the mirror first and point that finger, right? You know, no, that wouldn't really make him a bad person. And also, again, this is more of that extended rhetoric. If you are going to criticize my tough love and you're instead going to mollycoddle these people, you're only enabling them. You're encouraging them. You're part of the problem. I can't say this enough. I have heard this for years as a leftist, and I used to say this for years as a conservative. It's a trick because it's easy just to blame the other side. Be like, no, you don't understand. What we need is an economy to just let her rip. Everybody can go out and earn whatever they want. It's unlimited growth and unlimited earning and just bootstraps and cash and gold in them dar hills, and everybody can make it happen. We just got to get the government out of the way and get the groups out of the way and the trial lawyers and the you know Yep. And get everybody out of your way so you can go out there and run towards that gold vein and get all the money and get the brass ring and then lay back in the cut and pretend that you were good to society. In the meantime, all you did was contribute to a consumerist capitalist economy that keeps people in check, prevents them from doing that. That's the feature. It's not the government. The government is just propping up the capitalist economy that makes private wealth and private wealth acquisition possible. And these guys are going to come out here and like, you don't understand, you know, it could be so much better for a few of us if you just shut up.
You are hurting kids.
No, he's hurting wealthy people. He's causing some wealthy people a little bit of headache because they don't want to deal with the fact that the wealth that evaporated up quickly to them does not in fact trickle down. It's not a rising sea that rises all boats. Most of them capsize. The super yachts are fine, you know.
What I'm saying right now is if you want to purposely hurt a progressive woke person, this is how you talk to them.
It is not. A progressive woke person who's been in the game long enough knows exactly where this is coming from, knows to roll their eyes and let this roll off their back like water off a duck. This has been used since at least the 80s. Probably well before that. Hell, actually, this kind of like rat fuck kind of dialectic has been used since at least the 50s.
You say people like me are the meanies and the bad guys. No, sorry, you got it backwards.
How is Mr. D? Like, I'll admit it. I'll just take it on the chin. I'm a meanie. Sure, I'm an absolute meanie because I don't want private property anymore. I will seize land. If you give me power, I'll do it. I'm just a crazy socialist. I'm wacky that way. Meanie me up if the shoe fits. How is Mr. Deity the cruel one here? I'm not tracking this.
You're the cruel one.
Wow. There's a part 2 coming from Mr. Deity. I can't wait to see the amount of hyperventilating we're going to get out of Doug with part 2.
You think you're doing good things and helping people,
But
but
you're
you are the person who's not showing true compassion. Sometimes
because you're just not surrendering to market forces, Brian. Brian, you just got to give into the marketplace, man, and let people succeed who are going to succeed and let those that are going to fail fall by the wayside. You know what? The ground needs fertilizer, baby. You know?
true compassion means you hurt people's feelings in the short run.
That's that tough love. That tough love you get from a free market economy.
I don't know if progressive woke people can handle any more truth. Thanks for the
Haven't heard much.
donation, Brojo. The woke sounds like Christian fundamentalist. Yeah, this is the end. It's basically done. Any woke progressives who want to disagree with me? Put me in my place.
I think I just did. Oh, no, I'm just kidding. I didn't.
Takes you have to tag me because my audio, my mic always screws. I have to fiddle with it as soon as I open up Whereby. But if someone wants to talk to me,
Is he wrapping it up?
let me know in the live stream chat. Tag me
I guess that's it. He's not going to play the last.
Mr. Deed, if you're here, you're welcome to come on right now. I double dog dare you.
That sounds like less of a, that's less. I mean, even if you're being kind of like, a little tongue in cheek with the double dog dare thing, given the way he wrapped his commentary up about, Mr. Deity's, Brian's video, it doesn't sound like, Mr. Deity's going to get that warm a reception. Especially when Doug wraps it up by telling him that, you know what the real problem with America is, Brian? It's you, Brian. It's your, trimmed beard and your necklace and the product in your hair and the fact your eyeglasses, the fact you look like you smell like high grade cologne. Yeah, I think that's the third time I've said he looks like he smells good. He does. He looks like he smells like, the vetiver or something. I don't know, something fancy. Anyway, okay, I'm going to wrap this up here because it looks like that's where Doug is done, yelling at imaginary Mr. Deity. So let's see here. Let me eliminate that. We'll stop sharing that screen. The hell? Remove. Okay. Well, thank you folks for being here. This was a long one. It went much longer than I anticipated. Good Lord, over 3 hours. Okay. I'll wrap this one up now. Next video that I'll be doing will be next month, to make up for the fact I've been out here too long. No, I'll probably do one this weekend, I think. Probably cover some good old-fashioned Darth Dawkins stuff, unless something else drops. There's been a lot of stuff that I've seen between a few different sources here, so hell, maybe I'll be on tomorrow. But thank you for watching. Like, subscribe, do all that good stuff. Share if you can, if you think anybody would be interested in listening to 3 hours plus of me ranting about this guy talking about stuff. Yeah. You got any questions, suggestions, or anything like that? Email me at jeffersonspatchcock@gmail.com, and I will catch you all next time. Thank you very much. Good night.